Sure.
Good evening and welcome to the Beverly School Committee's Curriculum Instruction and Student Life Subcommittee meeting. Today is Wednesday, March 8th, 2023, and we are meeting in a hybrid model today using a remote application allowing for remote participation and for public access to the open portions of our meeting. We are also being broadcast and streamed by BevCam. With system upgrades, closed captioning is now available immediately on the BevCam broadcast and will be applied to the recorded version on the YouTube channel in 24 hours. Within 24 hours. On June 16th, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and on February 12th, and again on July 16th, 2022, he extended provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. This specifically suspends the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access. We would encourage viewers to utilize the BevCam streaming options this evening if possible. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation, although through that permission, a chair and a quorum will be physically present when this act and its extension expires. So joining us tonight are members of the school committee and various members of district administration and leadership teams. We will conduct a full roll call vote attendance in a moment for the record, since the meeting application sometimes does not allow display all participants. Please remember that any audio video you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record. As such, please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. I would now like to ask Ms. Abel to conduct a full roll call and to ensure that you're able to both hear me and that we can hear you this evening.
Sure, that would be my pleasure. In the room with us this evening in person, we have Dr. Dorothy Flaherty. Here. Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Ms. Karen Robinson.
Here.
I'm Ms. Rachel Abel, and we have Ms. Kate Twombly.
Here.
We also have Dr. Suzanne Chorocek.
Here.
We have Ms. Liz Wilson. Here. And our principal, Betty Taylor's in the audience, as is Dr. Jen Thomas. Our student representatives present in the room are Julia Bissett and Jaden Aravallo. And then joining us online, we have student representative Annabelle Miller. Just here. Make sure we can hear and see you. Thank you. And Cameron Pisano.
Here.
And Emma Judge.
Here.
We also have online joining us Principals Gabrielle Montevecchi.
Here.
Principal Megan Hart.
Here.
Principal Julie Smith.
Here.
Principal Aaron Sweeney.
Here.
And Principal Amy Blanchard.
Here.
Thank you. And I'm just going to do one more double check if anyone's trying to join. Yes, Lorigan Sudak, our citizen rep, is trying to join. Let me just click the button. And our citizen representative, Lorigan Sudak, has just joined our audio and joined us remotely. Lorigan, can you just confirm you can hear and see us?
Yes, I can hear and see you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. That is our attendance.
Thank you, President Abel. Before I turn the meeting over to Dr. Flaherty, I would like to ask Dr. Silva if he would lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Tonight, we have a real treat with our elementary principals online. We have Mrs. Oliver here to talk about middle school math and Dr. Jen Thomas to talk about high school. And then we also have some updates for our bullying prevention and intervention plan. And the first order of business that we do need to take care of is the approval of the minutes from the February 8th, 2023 meeting. And we do need a motion to accept those minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept.
The motion's been made. Is there a second?
I will second the motion.
And seconded. Mrs. Abel, could you call a roll for us, please?
Sure. Let's start in the room with Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes, Ms. Twombly,
Yes.
Julia Bissett, Jaden Aravello, then going remotely, Annabelle Miller,
Yes.
Cameron Pisano,
Yes.
Emma Judge,
Yes.
and Lorigan Sudak.
Yes.
I believe that comprises our voting members. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that 10? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9, 0. I think that's correct.
Thank you. And now for one of our highlights every month of our meeting is when we get to hear from our students. And I'm going to start with the middle school tonight and ask Jaden to come forward.
More than 40 professionals from the surrounding community. Microphone. More than 40 professionals from the surrounding community gathered in the library on Thursday morning, March 2nd, for our first BMS Career Day. These guest speakers volunteered to speak to 8th grade classes about their particular career paths. Our 7th and 8th grader peer leaders escorted these adults to each 8th grade homeroom. Students then heard about the experiences, work, training, and education of each speaker. Each guest speaker represented one of the 16 nationally recognized career clusters, such as agriculture, architecture, business, etc. These presentations were wonderfully done and received.
Thank you, Jaden. And as you can see, the slide on the screen is a visual that Margaret Lilly, one of our guidance counselors, put together at the middle school. And you can see all of the different companies and businesses that came to speak to our students. Now I'd like to ask Annabelle to share her update.
Yeah, sure. So it's another thing that follows along with the career days. So at the beginning of March on the 2nd, 2023, I and my fellow peers had the pleasure of listening to the volunteers for the career day in the category of the health science. There were 3 volunteers. The first one that came up was the director of nursing in the public schools of Beverly. Her name was Jody Elder. I really enjoyed listening to her because it was such a good learning experience, and she showed us how to follow our dreams throughout our lives because she talked about how she moved from job to job between the Children's Hospital and is now in the Beverly Public School District. The last one that talked was a veterinarian, and she explained how many different types of jobs and how there are many different types of procedures and medical types. I think that the career day was such a great learning experience, and I think that was good because we got our minds thinking about what we might want to do in the future.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. And how about from Julia?
Students in grade 5 recently visited our neighbors at Shore Country Day. We were their invited guests for the first showing of their musical, Seussical the Musical. In other grade 5 news, parents and community members are joining 5th graders this week for interactive presentations and education about our watershed. This is brought to our school through collaboration with Salem Sound.
Thank you. And Zanab.
I don't see that Zanab is joined.
All right. Then we will move to our high school representatives, and if Zanab joins us later, we'll hear from her. Cameron, would you like to share?
Yep. So the planning time for senior reach internships or projects are coming to an end. We're supposed to have all of our forms submitted by next Wednesday. And around this time, many seniors, many of my peers are starting to receive acceptance letters from colleges. And we're really starting to begin making decisions on where we'd like to go. And then for the rest of school, students in grades 9 through 11 are currently in the process for selecting the courses for next year they're going to take.
Thank you, Cameron. And Emma?
Yeah, so first, I actually am a mentor for BMS. So actually today I was able to go over and work with my 5th grader that I have. So I see her every Wednesday, and we just get to sit together and we chat. And usually we'll play a board game or something. But I did that today, and I know several of my other students do it, and we really found it's a lot of fun. And it's a really great opportunity for us. Also, next week, I believe the 15th, is the AP Fair, which I'll be representing my AP Literature class during the lunches, and I'll be able to talk to students and kind of tell them about how great AP classes are, and they're a great opportunity to really elevate your learning. And then, as Cameron said, REACH is coming to a close, so it's been a last push to put in those proposals. And then today, actually, in advisory, we had a presentation by Dr. Morgan about hateful speech and kind of how to combat that. So that was a really great presentation. Even though it was a little short, it was a great opportunity for the students.
Thank you, Emma. I think it's always, when we get back from February vacation, schools are always busy, but it just seems like when we come back from February, it just, like spring, just blooms and takes off, and it's really busy. I'm really excited about the career fair and getting students focused on that so much earlier. Do we have any questions for our students? Ms. Sabel?
Not a question for the student, other than thank you so much for sharing. It's good to get a glimpse. As my kids get older, I don't hear as much about what goes on in school, so it's pretty exciting. I did want to just say that Dr. Morgan has joined us online, and I neglected to identify Lisa Oliver and Erin Brown as being present, but I'm sure that Ms. Wilson has that covered. Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you. These are some of the best updates that I've had since I've been here, so I appreciate all the work that the students are putting into the substance of their updates. Just a quick notice, we did mention this once before, but we didn't get to talk about it in any detail at the last meeting because we ran short, but just want to make sure that you all put into your calendar June 15th from 5:30 to 7 o'clock. We'll be doing our Showcase of Learning, and this year it will be held at Beverly High School. So I always love a night when we can focus in on curriculum and instruction, and where we've been focused on new curriculum and program of studies. Tonight we get to focus and talk about what's happening inside of classrooms, and we wanted to give you kind of a snapshot of what's going on K to 12. And the high school always ends up having to go last, so tonight I decided that we would start with the high school, and we would work backwards to kindergarten, or to the elementary schools. So at this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Jennifer Thomas, our Director of STEM, forward to talk about high school math. We do have some videos, and we're having a little bit of auditory problems, but we will give it our best shot.
Great, thank you. The first slide here is just highlighting one of our new programs that we purchased. We're in year 2, which is Reveal. And you'll see a few glimpses of Grace and Lauren as they work together on problem set that their teacher had assigned. So the teacher had done some teacher-directed instruction to begin the class, and then the students were working in groups on some problems. So what I wanted to highlight in these two, and we don't have to watch the full, both of them, is that those students are getting these assignments, but they're not sitting alone at the computer. They're working together to solve the problems. And the way the programs work is it gives a lot of immediate feedback to the teacher. So then the teacher can use the data at the end of the class to see what students are missing, or at the beginning of the next class to address some misconceptions or problems. I'll just talk over on the video. Basically what she was trying to show you is that the students also get a report. So they get to know what they got wrong, what they still need to work on, and the program is giving them feedback. It also gives them hints along the way, so the teachers can set up that they get 1 try or 2 tries or 3 tries. But the students really enjoy using it because they get that immediate feedback. Another part to the program that we purchased is Alex, and Alex has 2 pieces to it. You can use it to help fill in the gaps for students learning, where they just, are on their own knowledge pathway, so to speak, after they've done an initial knowledge check. But teachers can also use it to assign homework or classwork. So this is Libby. She's one of our grade 9 algebra students. And she's just going to show you basically how she approaches it using the program as well. And then the little clips there are just some of the data. Again, the teachers are getting a lot of feedback as to what the kids know and don't know and what they might need to review. They can see how long students have spent on a problem. They can see which problems students struggled with the most so that then they can address those.
Everyone at the high school, and I'm going to be showing you how we use the balance. This is a new unit that we just learned like 5 minutes ago, but so I'm just gonna write down my problem. You don't have to. If you do get it wrong, like say I just put it the wrong point, I'll just make it random. And somewhere around them. If you do get it wrong, it'll tell you you're wrong, and you can try again. You can try the same problem again, just one more time. So then I'm gonna go, okay, I'll just move it. You get it wrong again, it'll let you try one other time. And then I'll just make it. And then it shows you.
The difference between the 2 programs, Reveal and Alex, I'll point out, is that Alex, you'll assign, let's say, a skill for the students to be able to do, but it will give each student a different problem. And what I mean by different problem, different set of numbers, right? So if you have students working in groups and they're all working on problem 1, they're trying to address that skill, however, they have different numbers. So it's forcing the students to talk to each other, like, how did you do it? Not, did you get 5? Right, for an answer, but like really, what process did you use to go about to solve the problem? So that's a nice added feature to the program that we're using. And then the final slide here, update for math curriculum at the highlight, is I just wanted to highlight that project-based learning that we're also doing at the high school. And so we have a new teacher that joined us this year, Kelly O'Day, and she's teaching our statistics course at the high school. And this video actually comes out a little bit better, so you'll be able to hear her. And I just want to highlight the choice that she's giving students in the projects and the real-world connections that she's making with our students.
At Beverly High School, and I teach statistics to the senior class. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the project-based learning that we do in that course and just the different things I like to tie into that course. So statistics really lends itself very well to not only project-based learning, but real data that is out in the real world. And so that's kind of the lens I've used for this particular class. Really try to pull real data whenever we can. And so what I'm talking about right now are 2 projects that I've done, one with linear regression, and then I did a project about data collection and bias. So the first project that I'm going to talk a little bit about is my linear regression project. And so the idea of linear regression is you compare 2 variables and do they have a positive or a negative relationship? How is the data spread out? And so I gave the students an option. I led them to a database called ERIC. And it is a socioeconomic database that pulls different sets of data from different states. So I showed them how to pull the data, but they actually got to pick the state that they wanted to do their data research on and the 2 topics that they wanted to compare. So I'll just show you a couple examples. One student chose Massachusetts and did medium household income and minimum wage, and they did it from 2000 to 2020. And what I had them do was they compared their data, they came up with different possible reasons why the data was going up. So for instance, minimum wage is never decreasing, whereas median income does kind of have an up and down motion to it, but overall they actually have some positive relationship there. Another student did Tennessee. I think they're interested in going to school there, so they kind of picked Tennessee. And they did unemployment rate and then total employees. So as the unemployment rate went down, the total employees out of in the population was going up. And what I did was I made sure that they collected data through 2020. And a lot of them noticed that there were happening big socioeconomic changes in 2020. And so they were pulling different inferences about this. For instance, this student said there was a jump in unemployment in 2020, and they said, oh, okay, that's probably due to the pandemic. And the same thing with employees. They noticed that their data went down. And, so there were fewer employees because there were more people that were on unemployment. So that was another, and one more example.
So you can just see there a quick little glimpse of some of the projects that we're doing at the high school with the students as well. Should I repeat? So you can just see a quick little glimpse of some of the projects that we're doing there at the high school, and we're really trying to incorporate student choice into it and make it a real-world connection.
Any questions for?
Yeah, so I wonder, in terms of the teachers that are participating in using these, these new tools, is it everyone that's teaching math that's adopting this new platform, or
So for our Algebra 1, our Algebra 2 and Geometry, this is year 2 of the Reveal and McGraw-Hill. Then our pre-calculus and calculus purchased a new curriculum also last year. So pretty much everybody has their hands in one of them.
okay.
Yeah.
And one more question. So the teacher of the classroom gets to see the students. Can you evaluate across classrooms as well?
On the Alex portion, I can see all students and all teachers' data. Yeah, so I can. In the Reveal platform, it's a little trickier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you.
Being in the middle school, I have a little bit of high school with us.
Need the mic on?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. All right. As I was saying, being at the middle school, we have a little bit of curriculum that is similar to the high school in grades 6, 7, and 8. And then we have curriculum that is similar to the elementary school in grade 5. So I'll talk a little bit about grade 7 first, since it mirrors a little bit about what you heard from the high school. So we're using Reveal. I do have a video, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what is seen in the classroom as a highlight. So in our 7th grade classes, we have a combination of instructional strategies that I use. So we have whole group, small group, group work, and then end of the week independent check-in. Teachers are really focused this year on pulling up a teacher table in grade 7, which is relatively new for grade 7 classrooms. We're also we have Math 7, we have an accelerated math class. In addition to that, we're looking at different ways to assess students. So I do have some examples. We have the traditional quiz or tests that we've all taken before in math classrooms. We do have a sort of PBL-ish project that teachers were utilizing in order to collect information about students and how they were doing. And then as the high school said, we're looking at having more student voice, so we did have a choice board for a particular unit too, where students were able to choose how they showed their knowledge. We also have the ALEX program, like the high school, so everything that you just heard is the same at the middle school. It is reinforcing math skills for students, meeting them where they're at. It is used for assignments, for homework, but it's also used within the classroom for students to preview work, to practice standards that they've already been introduced to fill in some gaps that they may have. I do have a video. I'm not sure if it will play. Okay.
Alex, for those that were on the committee may remember this, but when we purchased Alex, it goes with the Reveal program, but it's set so that it meets a student where they are, and then it gets harder from there as they close some of their skills. So it was in trying to recognize the fact that students would be missing some skill gaps because of the pandemic. And this should help to fill some of that in on independent work, so each student gets what they need individually. All right, so we're going to try the video. You need to turn your mic.
I think Mr. Silver had a question.
Just to comment on what you were saying with Alex, I presume that will also allow for students to advance at their pace as well. Yeah, that's great.
Yep. Okay.
Well, we're in an outcome. Hi, I'm Olivia, and I'm Megan. So far this year, we've kind of been working with ratios and proportional numbers and percents, like with tax, interest, and like sales and stuff like that. We've also been looking into integers and kind of rational numbers. And we've been using algebra and PEMDAS / GEMDAS for this module. We're moving into algebra and variables and how to set equations with them and how to do equations with them. What does a day look like in this math class? Well, usually throughout the week, we work on packets, and on Mondays after we do a short ed puzzle, sometimes we move on to teacher table to get a better review of the lesson. We also get a bunch of movement. We do those scavenger hunts so you can find these equations, so it's not like you're just sitting down at a desk. And at the end of the week, we get a check-in to see what we've learned throughout the week and see what we need help on. And these check-ins are also retakeable, so you can retake them to feel like you're paid. For tests, we do get paper tests, but we also get that in like projects, which makes it better because we get them in different forms, so it's like something different, but it's not all of it like the same. Yeah, and we also work on Alex like in our spare time or at home for like just like an extra 7 or 10 topics. You can preview things that haven't come up in math class yet, so you can get a better look on upcoming math. Thank you.
Do you want to show any of these?
Yeah.
Go ahead. All right.
Okay. For those of you that get a copy of the slideshow, there are links there so you can look at examples if you would like to see them. Okay. So grade 5 is, the curriculum is Zern, and it is the same curriculum that the elementary school has in grade 5. So we have 3 particular components that we have in all of our grade 5 classrooms. So there is small group instruction, that's the direct instruction at the teacher table. There's partner and group work. They're practicing on problem sets. They're discussing how they're getting to answers. That's more critical thinking. And then there's also independent work, which is the personalized component that they have within the classroom. Our 5th grade students really like math. And so our teacher focused on that aspect of it a little bit. They talked about some of the things. They interviewed the class during morning meeting. Some of the things that they said is that they really enjoy doing fun games that help them practice their math. They like math because of the different strategies that they're using within the classrooms, and they said that that's what's best for their brains. They like the math chat in Zern, and that they do that alone because they get to learn from somebody different from their classroom teacher. So that was interesting. I do also have a video of a couple of students talking about some of the highlights in the classroom, if it's able to play.
You're going to tell me about mascot. My name is Lacey. My name is Parker. My name is Victoria. What is your mascot look like? We do math centers. The centers are teacher table, partner work, and independent work. What are you learning about mathing? I'm learning about how to add and subtract fractions using the area models and big number 1. What's your favorite part of Zern? The little math tables. You get one heavy. Yeah, my favorite part of Zern is probably how they always help you to get the exact answer. What has been your favorite thing that we've done in math? It's attending to be doctors and doing order of operation. My favorite part of math class is probably when we played grudge ball. It was really fun. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Mrs. Oliver about middle school? I think the one thing that stands out, hopefully for everybody watching and here, is that math is no longer. Math is no longer about sitting with a piece of paper and solving equations. They're using manipulatives, they're thinking, they're talking about math, they're looking at alternative ways to solve problems. So it's a very interactive and energetic subject. And now the elementaries are taking a slightly different approach because we do many of the same things across the buildings. And so each of them are going to be talking about a different resource or a different approach that we use in supporting our math learning across the elementary schools. And we're going to start with Mrs. Hart to talk about reinvesting in ST Math.
Thank you so much for having us all. Good evening, everyone. We're going to try and get everyone in here on the elementary front because there are 5 of us. So Zern is also our main curriculum in K-4 in the elementary school. We are currently in year 3 of our implementation. And we thought we would do something slightly different because we know that this particular subcommittee has had presentations on Zern in the past. So we really wanted to take some time to highlight some of the other awesome things that are happening across the district with our math instruction. And at AIRS, we're spotlighting ST Math. ST Math is not something that's new to Beverly, but it is something that we are really diving back into. ST Math is an online instructional program. And so when we adopted Zern, I feel like there was a little bit of time in the very beginning where we were working on how to balance ST Math with Zern in terms of our instruction. And we are really finding our way through that at this point in time. You can see Gigi on the screen. Gigi is the main character in ST Math. If you have young elementary kids, they may call ST Math just Gigi. I was doing Gigi. And so when they refer to that, they mean ST Math. And the point of ST Math is to move Gigi along in its personal journey, math journey. And the way that they go through the math journey is they work on games that are representative of standards-based skills for each grade level. Sorry, Dr. Flaherty, you can advance it. And at AIRS, we've been doing some different things to kind of hype up ST Math. Obviously, it is a game format, so most kids love it. But again, we're really working on a balance of finding the right digital component for kids. And so through ST Math, really in the state of Massachusetts, not just in Beverly, they have a goal that all students, all buildings will have, kids will solve 800,000 puzzles and they'll get to an 80% syllabus progress. So we have, just like all of the other buildings, we have some digital signage up in our lobby. We have different slides where we track that. You can see that here. The kids love to see the progress that we're making. We update that regularly. We also have an ST Math banner this year at AIRS. Schubert is our, we've made him our honorary mascot for the year as he's a Ryleside seal. And so we're racing Schubert to see who can get through to get those objectives more quickly. Right now, Gigi's winning, which is amazing. And we highlight top classes also on the digital signage each week for puzzles and numbers of minutes. Some of the other things that we've been doing, we've had some school-wide competitions. So like we had just showed that different classrooms will highlight to show their progress. We've had math games, we've had pie face, and we also have a little Gigi poster outside every classroom in our building that we update with like, hey, great, you're up 2% this week. You know, this is where you're at in your progress as a class. And so it's, in addition to being a nice motivator, it's a nice team builder for classes as well. And then this is just some words about ST Math from some of our AIRS mathematicians. This should be pretty quick.
Named Gigi, and he needs to like cross and finish like the whole cell tower, and you have to help him get to the end. So you have to solve these math problems to help him get to the end. You need to help him. How do you help him? He needs help going to the mountain. I love that if you're like on like a really hard level and like you're one level away from the mountain and you complete it, that would be very happy for me. Like sometimes I look for like the key things. So the one I'm on right now, it has like number thing and it says times 2 and then plus 1 and then say it would be like 5, like 2 times 2 would equal 4, and then if it was plus 1, that would equal 5. So I just look for the key things on the bottom or the top side. Hey, Lynn, how about 145 plus 120? Because if you complete a level, you get to see a penguin walk in front of you. We play ST Math because we want to get smart.
You missed him. Then he said, like me.
Awesome. And thank you, Dr. Flaherty. That's it for AIRS. I will pass it over.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So reporting from Centerville on yet, living out the theme of like emphasizing the ways that we make our curriculum come to life. As you know, one of our focus areas for the district and our school is our discourse practices, and that's the way that we are supporting students to think, to talk about their thinking, and to make sense of that thinking, especially in math. And so we created a video that highlights the problem solving that's an integral part of our math blocks. And we wanted to share a little classroom snapshot of what that looks like after a lot of explicit instruction from our teachers and our coaches. And so I'm really banking on our technology working because it's really not that interesting to listen to me talk very much. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll go to a classroom and I'll say like what these things look like. So without further ado, I'll just cross my fingers here.
Oh yeah, the strategy. Because like if you don't know the strategy, then we can't follow. So like if you don't know it, equation, math, drawing, and then the next one would be answer. Okay, so I just say answer, right? You don't need a circle. Yeah, we need a circle or answer. Yeah, it's answer, like, so now math answer. Answer, it's the same, doesn't make sense. Right, and we get that. No, yeah. And then we do our math drawing. And read 120 tiles and 56 tiles are counted. How many more boxes of tiles does Leanne need to buy? So now we need to do 8. So the maybe we have to divide that again to 8, and then we would get how many boxes. Yeah. So it's all the okay, right. The answer we get from 120 minus 56 will probably be how many boxes. Wait, we're still doing 74. 74? Yeah. Oh, wait a second. You can't do 74 divided by 8. You can only get 74. So we must do that.
It's too bad these 3 in particular do such a good job of explaining their thinking and trying to talk about how they get to solve the problem. And you see the light bulb moment go off. But I think that the music on top of the voices are causing something we can't get through. So, Mrs. Smith, do you want to add anything else?
Yes, I'll finish up. As I watched some of the videos played, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how this is going to play, because you have 18 third graders actively talking about math. So please tell me that you at least felt that vibrant energy as they were talking about the math and really owning that process. And so I think that the one thing I want to appreciate is, I'll tell you, in September, it did not look like this, right? And so I think they worked a lot around trying to get kids to really own that problem and think about it before they just jump to solving it. And there's a lot of accountability. My favorite things is the kids hold each other accountable with, they can't just say something, they have to explain why. So you could maybe hear that a little bit when she said, well, why do you think that? And I think they were a lot more hesitant than they are without sort of being filmed and really, drawing that thinking out for each other. So I was happy to hear Jed Thomas talking about the work they're doing around, getting kids to explain their thinking. And so we're hoping that we're sending forth, kids, better able to hold that skill as they move throughout the grades.
And all the committee members, you do have these linked in the slides that you got earlier tonight. And I think that one of the second thing that stood out for me in this video, Mrs. Smith, is that this group and the one behind them get to the same answer, but in a very, very different way. Thank you. And Ms. Sweeney's going to talk about Breakout EDU, and I think that in light of time and the quality of the video, we're not going to do the video links. If you can just talk through your slides, Ms. Sweeney.
Sure thing. So thank you. I'm just highlighting an example of one of the ways that we use supplemental resources to motivate and engage students in math. It gives them an opportunity to take from the explicit instruction and use and practice with those skills. So Breakout EDU involves playing standards-aligned interactive games where students use clues and critical thinking to solve a series of puzzles in order to break out of a locked box. The breakout kits can be used across all content areas, but we're focusing with them just in math. And I just want to give a shout out to the Beverly Education Foundation in combination with funds from the PTO. They provided the resources for us. So I just want to give them a big thank you. But the Breakout EDU has both digital and hands-on kit components. And there's a library of standards-aligned games that allow teachers to search for puzzles based on the standards that they're teaching and that they want the kids to practice. And it gives the kids an opportunity to work together, to think conceptually, and to use their prior knowledge. And so what's great about the Breakout EDU kits is that it targets many of the skills in math while simultaneously developing the 4C skills and critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. And it also provides them with an opportunity to work together and use their SEL skills. And it does all of this in a highly engaging way. And I just wanted to highlight a few pictures of the teachers at our staff meeting PD to learn the features and of the program and how to navigate the platform. Because as we know, any resource is only as effective as the teacher who uses it and is comfortable with it. So they spent a little time doing that, and it was an easy sell because it was easy to learn and gives them another resource to fall on. And so the teachers provide these challenges digitally or with hands-on kits, so they can use their iPads or they can use a kit that actually looks like a treasure box with locks on it. But even when the students are using a device, they're working together and using hands-on materials to solve the problems. And so either way, they receive immediate feedback. With the digital version, they receive a message that says they broke out and that they correctly solved the problems and you unlocked the lock. So, it's really important that when they're working together on these with their partners, that they're receiving that immediate feedback. And then they can, as I said, the teachers can also set up these kits that look like treasure boxes and that they can physically unlock locks. So the answers they just use the lock and they use codes that correspond with the answers so that they can open the lock. So if they get the right answer, obviously the lock will open, and if they don't, it won't open, and they have to keep trying until it does. So there is a video there, but you can watch it later.
It's a cute video of the kids that get it.
It's just them showing how excited they are when they unlock the lock, and they're talking to each other about what they have to change, and then the lock opens and they're happy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then there's what's great about it too is there's an entry point for every student, and the kits serve as a great opportunity to break down barriers for all students, especially if you find those students who it's tough to engage or if they have difficulty participating. So we found this to be a really successful resource for all our students. And eventually, students will be able to create their own puzzle. So it still has a lot of potential for higher order thinking skills and then working together to create something that other students can work on. So we hope to be able to build to that soon.
And this year, it's a pilot at Hannah and Cove, correct? And we hope to spread that to the other schools next year. Dr. Silva?
I wonder with the three or with the four different programs that we've been listening about, what's done for homework? Are you able to log into these systems from home and continue the work, or?
For ST Math, yes. I don't know about the EDU. Is that just being used in school? Okay.
They can do the breakout EDUs at home, and there's like a daily puzzle they can do. But we only send the iPads home on like a very infrequent basis, just so that when they're home, they're spending time outdoors and stuff, hopefully. Well, maybe not now, but.
Okay, so it's installed on designated
It's on
units.
all their iPads.
It's not a browser-based thing where you could log in from home.
ST Math is. They can
Okay.
they can access that from home, and that's the main. This is a supplemental program. ST Math is really the partner that we use with Zern as our core curriculum.
Okay.
Hannah.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing that my pictures didn't make it in, so you won't get the benefit of all of our fabulous friends' faces on there tonight, but I'm excited to share with you a little bit about the WIN block, which again is an instructional strategy that is used across all of our elementary schools in, if not most grades, then quite a few of them across the district. And WIN is a term that many of you have heard before. It's called the What I Need block. And it's generally a 60-minute block where students are grouped strategically. And that's based on data that we are collecting formatively and also through our benchmarks and our ST Math data. And these dynamic groupings can change almost weekly, because what we are working so hard to do is to make sure that we're giving kids exactly what they need for real-time support, giving them feedback, extension work to move toward their goals in math. And during this time, the blocks have additional support staff working with our students. So the Title I math teacher, our instructional coaches, principals, school adjustment counselors, student teachers are involved. It's one of my favorite times to connect with students because I get to see the instruction from the inside out, participate with students, and the fourth graders probably realize that I'm really learning from them when I'm the one instructing the small group lesson. I'm really learning from them very often. Teachers love the WIN block because it's targeted time to provide students more strategic instruction. The dynamic groupings help the students work together collaboratively with peers from other classes, which builds new social connections. It's always fun for the kids to go into another teacher's class, work with new friends they don't get to see every day. So there's that social aspect to it. And then the teachers appreciate getting feedback from their colleagues on the work that their students are doing, and sometimes different insights and perspectives on those students' needs. And there's a very high level of engagement.
Any questions for Mrs. Montevecchi?
Oh, I think there's one more slide that's about what students like. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So the last slide I think is about what students like about WIN. They like time to practice skills with their peers that they don't see every day, building relationships, as I said, time to work on activities, games, projects, time to dig into special math activities like Breakout EDU, which you just saw, which may not be a part of the regular math block. Thank you, Dr. Flaherty.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mrs. Blanchard will talk about building fact fluency.
Yes, I know we are very short on time, so I will try to keep this very brief. So building fact fluency toolkits are a supplemental program that we are using to enhance our instruction at the elementary level. And you can just go to the next slide. Each lesson is in a string of lessons, which take about 10 to 12 minutes each day to encounter. And they start off with an image talk. Dot, if you could go to the next, that would be great. An image talk where we are visually inviting students to warm up with a kickoff lesson. And students are provided with a visual, and they are just asked to tell us what they think and what they wonder about the picture. And they have some really great, deep conversations about that. I have an example really briefly about the picture of the pizza, and I had a first grader go, wow, there are 10 slices in that pizza. And then another student next to him was like, yeah, did you notice each one had 3 pepperonis on it? So if we looked at the whole pie, we have 30 pieces of pepperoni. I was mind blown. The amount of math that they're doing without even knowing they're doing math was super engaging. So from an image talk, they go on to tool talks where they are essentially still looking at different ways to represent numbers. You can see in the picture here with my teacher, she is showing different ways to show numbers with Unifix cubes, and over a little bit further on her picture there, she is using number bonds. So we're moving on to our ACT math task, which is a 3-point lesson, which is a highly based, fun activity that kids just love to do. And it makes sense to them in the real world. So you hook them and you give them a bag of peppers, and you kind of prompt them with a question of, how many yellow peppers do you see in this bag? And then we go on to part 2, and you give students the opportunity to kind of grapple with what they're looking at and just listening to the deep conversations and the different ways they manipulate the numbers and what they come out with. And at the part 3 of that is a big reveal where we kind of open the bag and we look at what was in the bag and how each child got to the answer they did. So it's a super fun, engaging thing. And this is just some examples of pictures of them engaged in the process. So then another portion of this is number talks. And with number talks, sorry, just one sec. They're powerful, short mental math routines in which students are able to talk about the different ways they can solve computation problems. So if you see here, there is a basic equation, but they're showing 3 different ways that they got to the answer. It is also supplemented with games, which are fun, engaging ways that students can work in pairs or in smaller groups to kind of further practice their skills. And then there is obviously a gradual graduation of what we're asking students to do. So we start off with our first entry point with an anger problem, where students work together to solve a problem based on the topic that they've been working on. And beyond that, they go on to contextual practice problems, which is a collection of story problems that relate to the topic that they're working on. And they provide students with opportunities to work deeply with all different types of problems. And what does the teacher say? I am not going to read all of them, but I will just highlight maybe 1 or 2 of them. One of my teachers said, my favorite thing about BFF is that all students can access it, engage in conversations about it. Some students that otherwise struggle during math time thrive during BFF. Everyone's ideas are accepted, and all are welcome, as there's no one way of thinking of solving problems. Therefore, all students are empowered to share their thoughts. And then just another one is, it's a great way to start my math block and really get students' brains into math zone and challenge their critical thinking skills. And I was leaving you with a 40-second snippet of a friend who I asked in passing today, I'm like, what do you love about BFF? And he just made my heart smile. So if we don't have time to show it, that is totally fine. But later on, you should check it out because he warms your heart.
He really does. You should watch it. I want to thank all of our leaders tonight for giving you a great overview of math K-12. We do have 3 slides that Dr. Trocek will go through quickly, but she needs a vote from this committee to bring to school committee at our next meeting. Later tonight.
Yes, and I will be very brief. You all got the information in your packets in advance. We are required biennially to update our bullying intervention and prevention plan. And so I'm coming here forward so that you all, hoping that you had a chance to look over those changes, and would you recommend those those changes because at school committee later tonight, we're going to be voting on it. I'll give it to you very quickly. The changes are very brief. Can you go to the next page? So there really were only a few changes. Most of them involved language changes. We did have our attorneys look it over. We make sure that we cross-reference it with our handbooks and make sure that we cross-reference it with any changes that may have been made to the law. You'll see on page 6, we expand, so there was, the language changes were the minor ones that you saw throughout it. On page 6, we did add in expanded opportunities for professional development for staff. That's a requirement that DESE really hopes that we're all doing, so helping staff on ways to instill accountability in the school settings, responsibility for identifying existing needs and cultural linguistic resource shifts. We've always had that. We shifted that responsibility to the Director of Opportunity, Access, and Equity. We changed our form of reporting. We used to it used to say that we had anonymous boxes. That was way back when we put the shoe boxes in the office and people would put their little notes in it, and now that's more an electronic. You can either make your anonymously make any reports to school leadership or through written or oral communication. And then finally, the longer passage that looks like it was a lot of changes is really just reiterating some aspects of our plan in multiple places throughout the plan so that it aligns with our how we respond to bullying. There were no substantive changes to the way we do things. It's all really more language. So our requirement is that we bring it forward to a stakeholder group like curriculum and instruction, and then you would make your recommendations so that the school committee tonight can take a full vote on these changes so that they become official. So that's all I had.
I'd like to make a motion that the CISL subcommittee approve this change and send it forward to the regular school committee tonight.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Mrs. Abel, can you please call a roll?
Sure. And we lost some of our students, although we did gain Zainab. She did join us. I'll start in the room with Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Myself, Ms. Abel, yes. Ms. Twombly.
Yes.
We lost Julia and Jaden in the room. We still have Emma Judge on the line.
Yes.
Thank you. And Annabelle Miller.
Yes.
And Cameron Pisano.
Yes.
And Zainab Ba.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I think that's 8 this time. Wait, as Lorgan, you're still here with us too. Is that a yes?
I am here, yes.
Okay. So we were taking a vote on moving forward the bullying prevention. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
So the motion passes.
Motion is passed.
There are no additional questions. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Abel, can you call a roll?
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes. Ms. Twombly.
Yes.
Annabelle Miller.
Yes.
Cameron Pisano.
Yes.
Emma Judge.
Yes.
Zainab Ba.
Yes.
And Lorgan Sudak.
The meeting is adjourned
The
at
meeting is
7:34.
Thank you.
That was fast. That was my super fast.
I can rename. I can do it here. I always spell her name wrong, though. She'll have to fix it if I got it wrong. Okay. Let's call to order. This is the Beverly School Committee regular school committee meeting, and today is Wednesday, March 8th. I forgot to check with BevCam. I'm good. Yeah. We're good. Great. We are meeting in a hybrid fashion today using a remote meeting application that allows for remote participation and public access to the open portions of our meeting. We are being broadcast on BevCam, and they are also streaming us on their YouTube channel, so thank you so much, BevCam. With the recent system upgrades, the closed captioning is available immediately on the broadcast channel of BevCam for those that want closed captioning, and it is also applied to the YouTube channel generally within the first 24 hours, so it will be encoded on the YouTube recording as well. On June 16th, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and then in February on the 12th, and again on July 16th of 2022, he extended provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. Although we're told an extension may be granted. This specifically suspends the need for our quorum and chair to physically be present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. We would encourage viewers to use the BevCam streaming or broadcast options this evening if possible. Just as a side note, Beverly does have prior approval from the Attorney General for remote participation, although through that permission, the chair and a quorum do need to be physically present if and when this act expires. Tonight is a regular meeting of the school committee, which means we do have an agenda item for addressing the body during the meeting. A sign-up sheet is available if there's anyone that wishes to sign up. We also have an email address where you can send your comments in advance. That email address is residentvoice@beverlyschools.org, and 7 people have taken advantage of that option, so I will be reading those remarks into the record later this evening. Joining us are members of the school committee, various members of the district administration, and our elected leaders. So thank you for joining us in person. I'm going to conduct a full roll call attendance for the record, because sometimes when we're using the remote meeting application, we cannot see everyone. And I do want to use this opportunity to confirm that our remote participants can both see and hear us. I also would like to issue a reminder that any audio or video that you supply will become part of this meeting record, and as such, please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. Let me now conduct that roll call to make sure that everyone can see and hear us. Mayor Michael Cahill.
Here.
Ms. Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
Dr. Ken-Ann McKenzie.
Here.
Great. Ms. Karen Robinson.
Here.
Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Ms. Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And I am Rachel Abel. We are also joined by our superintendent, Dr. Suzanne Chorocek.
Here.
We have in the room Dr. Dorothy Flaherty. Ms. Erin Brown.
Here.
Online, we have Dr. Andre Morgan.
Here.
And Ms. Jean Sherburne.
Here.
Okay. We have our student representative, Kaylee Quintino. And let me just see who else is joining us online. We have our Director of Food Services, Christina Leal.
Here.
We have our Special Education and Pupil Personnel Services, Ms. Bethany Splansky.
Here.
And our elementary principal, Amy Blanchard, is still with us.
Here.
Okay, that takes care of the roll call. Thank you for confirming that you can both hear and see us. The first order of business on our agenda is actually the Pledge of Allegiance. And Representative Paracella, the room is asking for you to please lead us in the pledge. We have a larger flag here behind me.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, Representative Paracella. And without further ado, the next agenda item is to welcome you both to our regular school committee meeting. I know a few of us had some questions that we sent in advance, but we would welcome your remarks. We're in our budget cycle right now, so I think that's of primary concern. So anything that you'd like to share with the committee?
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it very much for having us here. Thank you, Madam President, Mr. Mayor, and school committee members. First of all, thanks for what you do for our community. Really appreciate it. It's very important work. So as you mentioned, we are into the budget cycle now. So typically the governor would submit his or her budget around January 20th, but because this is the first year of Governor Healy's administration, she had until March 1st. So she released her budget March 1st. So it was a little bit later than typically would happen. Oh, great. I don't have to keep holding. Thank you. So we got that on March 1st. So what will typically happen is we will take a look at that, and then the House will go next with our budget. And so we're having the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Ways and Means Committee, they're having hearings throughout the state to take input from folks about the governor's budget and just getting information. So we almost always do our budget votes the week after April school vacation. So we'll file our amendments the week before the April school vacation, and then we'll have a vote, typically 3 or 4 days of budget deliberations in April. So that's kind of where we stand now. So with Governor Healy's budget, I submitted a handout with just some of prior history of Chapter 70 funding, which is the education funding that the school districts get and unrestricted local aid. So Governor Healy, under her budget, Beverly would get $14.54 million for this next fiscal year. And last fiscal year, or this current fiscal year, was 13.1. So that's her budget. There's a lot of discussion about, what kind of funding will the schools get, especially with the new so-called millionaires tax, the Fair Share Amendment. She appropriated, her consideration was that she thought that the state would take in $1 billion from that. It's new. It's a new law. It came into effect in January. So I think we might do a little bit more cautious approach about how much we think that the Commonwealth will take in on that. It's not clear because it's only been in effect for about 2 months. As far as like the overall revenue picture for the Commonwealth, which would affect budgeting, we had about 25 months in a row of higher than expected revenue. So things were really going well for the Commonwealth. And then in January, it was less than expected. So that was the first time in a significant amount of time that revenues came in less than expected. February numbers actually came in a little bit better than expected, so that's a good sign. So maybe January was just a blip. But so those are some of the considerations that have to be taken into effect. We're going to lose a lot of those federal ARPA dollars, aren't going to be coming anymore. So some of that money that helps supplement our budgets won't be available starting in 2024. So we have to look at that. And also, some funding that the federal government was providing, for example, for school lunches, for a period of time, the federal government was paying for free school lunches for all students, and they've stopped doing that. So we decided in our budget to cover that. So just about 2 weeks ago, in a supplemental budget, we appropriated $65 million so that those free school lunches could go for the rest of the school year. And also SNAP benefits, also known as food assistance. Though the federal government has stopped the supplemental COVID money for that, so we supplemented that by adding about $130 million to help folks with food stamps or SNAP benefits. So those are things that we've taken up and covered what the federal government used to pay for. So I'm not sure how much longer we'll be able to do that, but we did do that this fiscal year. So your students will get free lunches for the rest of the year. So those are just kind of some of the overviews of what's happening. Chapter 70, we always, Senator Lovely and myself are always making sure that we try to get the most we can for our communities. It's a big line item for this current fiscal year. It's almost $6 billion. So when each community is saying, we really need more money, we understand that, but you also just kind of have to look at the big picture of how that affects the state budget. And so with Governor Healy's budget, it would go up to about $6.5 billion, but part of that would be taken into account the fair share money. So that's kind of a general overview of where the budget process stands at this point. Thanks.
And I'll just add from the Senate side, thank you, Representative, that was terrific. So as the rep said, the House took up the SUP budget a couple weeks ago. The Senate will take up that budget tomorrow. And so we will be mirroring pretty much almost exactly what the House has done, so based on the governor's recommendations. With regard to ARPA, Governor Baker was pretty good about being able to spend down all the ARPA that's available to the state before he left office. And as you know, that 62F was also triggered, which returned about $3 billion to the taxpayers. So ARPA is pretty much gone at the state level. And so we just are aware of that. We were hoping to hold on to some of that going into the new administration, but that didn't happen. With regard to well, the rep explained SNAP and free lunch and our Chapter 70. Relative to the fair share, so the governor did say a guesstimate of about $1 billion is is that guesstimate. So about a little north of $500 million, $510 million going to education, $490 million going to transportation, and that's the governor's again recommendation on how that will break out. Both the House and Senate will separately examine that. The House goes first, but the Senate is actually building its budget now as well. This is really timely. I have my budget meeting with Senate Ways and Means Chair in 3 weeks. I'm sure yours is coming up shortly as well, so that we can actually speak to those needs and where the shortfalls might come in, especially, Mayor, you had asked particularly to the special education, that 14% increase, and what is that going to look like? So my office reached over to the chair of education on the Senate side, Senator Lewis, and you have a new chair on your side, Representative Garlick, right. And just to kind of get an idea about that 14%. So the Education Committee is very aware of it, is going to be working with Ways and Means, both House and Senate, to make those determinations on how it's affecting every school system. So how to be able to fill that gap, because you're a year behind with reimbursement, and that creates an issue for you. So very aware. We also reached over particularly to Beverly so that we would be prepared tonight, and just what those numbers look like as well. And interesting with Beverly, and it's almost every community, almost every school district with this, what the formula considers the community as a below effort community. It's happening with every community, almost every district across the Commonwealth. So Senator Lewis's office is working on, you pay a penalty. Now, I don't know it really well, but this is what we're being told, and I'm not sure if you're aware of it, and I can get more information, but I wanted to make you aware of at least this, because it's a below effort. It shows up on the formula sheet. There's penalties attached to it, and it's what it is it's because of, let me just make sure I have it here. It says Beverly may be especially curious to see in the bottom right portion of the municipal contribution page, the step 475,000 they are charged because the formula considers them, quote, below effort. These are dollars that don't show up in their aid because they are penalized by the formula. I don't know why. I'm going to have to dig a little deeper into this with Senator Lewis's office, but almost every community is facing this. So they're looking for a fix to this so there isn't a penalty. And Mayor, you're going to ask me a question that I hope I can answer.
We're all going to ask questions after that.
I know. But anyway, they're very much aware, again, of that 14% tuition adjustment and how that's going to significantly impact budgets, and so working on that as well. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer your questions, but I'll get answers for you. And then we thank you to the school committee for supplying a number of questions that in advance so that we can have some information for you as well with regard to other specific issues. I'm happy to dive into those. Do you want us to?
I'm wondering, before we wander away from the below effort community conversation, even though you say you need to find more information on that. I guess as you go delving into trying to find more information, my question would be, how can the majority of the communities all be below effort, right? So if we all fail a test, perhaps the test is ill-formed, or perhaps the instruction was not on target for what was tested. And similarly, if the bulk of the communities are below effort, it does not seem like we're measuring correctly. So I would ask that as you go do that investigation, Senator Lovely, you try to ask that question, perhaps in a little nicer way.
That was very nicely put. And I will definitely give you more information. I'm sorry that I can't get into the depth of it today. This was what was given to me by my staff at just late this afternoon, and I asked the same thing. I'm like, how am I going to explain this? Do I bring this up? I think I do bring it up because it was brought to our attention. But let me get a more in-depth analysis for you, because I don't want you to. Because yeah, you're right. Why is everybody affected? Why is everyone below effort? So we'll figure out what that is.
Just wanted to mention one thing too, which I think is very helpful, is like Dr. Chorchak and other superintendents, they meet with us. You know, we have meetings on a fairly regular basis to talk about some of the issues that the school districts are facing. So it's very helpful to us to have those meetings, so that as this budget cycle becomes more closer to becoming voted on, that we can have a better understanding. We had a meeting, 2 or 3 months ago, I think it was. Yeah, and that issue about the 14% increase was brought up to us back then too. So it's helpful for us to get that information.
Great. I don't know if you wanted to handle some of the questions in any particular order. I think you started to address some of the question about the new tax, the fair share amendment. I think a second part of that question was whether school transportation might fit into any of that, was it 490 million that was earmarked for transportation. I think, not to put words in any of the committee members' mouths, but I think we had questions specifically about purchasing more electric buses, being able to run more routes, provide more transportation and more opportunities for students. And then obviously our homeless transportation cost is something that's part of an unfunded mandate that we struggle with.
So I can tell you just from that $490 million that the governor is earmarking for transportation out of fair share, they fall into three really broad buckets. To strengthen state municipal partnerships on local transport projects, highway and bridge infrastructure, and more accessible MBTA stations and ticket fares. So it sounds like from how she has earmarked this is for very big, broad infusion of dollars into the public transportation system. But we certainly can take this back, again, timely, to be able to see how it could break down further to benefit fleets, local fleets. And, you know, just here today in the parking lot for the electric school bus. It was really, really fun. And how can we, again, prioritize that as well? So we can do that.
Great.
There's some federal transportation dollar money for electric school buses, so that's at the federal level. There was like an opera grants too, which I think has expired, but with the President Biden's infrastructure bill did have some federal money in there for purchasing electric school buses as well. And then there was some money from the Volkswagen settlement for some electric vehicles. I don't think those are specifically for school buses, but some communities can buy other electric vehicles using that money as well.
Great. So the second question that we had submitted to you was about the unfunded mandates, and we were wondering if there are any bills in the hopper, so to speak, that would help the school districts address some of the items like the homeless transportation costs. Just basically tell us what kinds of things are in the works.
Yeah. I mean, we're not supposed to put unfunded mandates on you, and I know that sometimes folks think like we do. The 6,000 bills got filed this year, so we're trying to go through all those and see, but we all both had our staffs looking at it, and it didn't seem to be anything egregious out there. right now in terms of unfunded mandates for the school districts. But yeah, I know that the transportation issue is something that, again, school districts are dealing with. Just the whole funding situation for our schools, I think it's one of the most important things we do is educate our kids. So we're trying to make sure that you appropriately get the amount of money that you deserve. The higher ed folks are also begging for more money. We're hearing from the community colleges, the governor has $25 million to provide free community college for any student over age 25. UMass, Salem State, those folks are also looking for more money. So even though if we get $1 billion from the Fair Share Amendment, it just doesn't seem to go very far. And it should be split roughly equally between education and transportation. Just one bridge going over the Cape is $2 billion. So it's amazing how quickly that money can be spent.
And same, the bills are being funneled into the committees of jurisdiction, so we should know what bills are, especially in the education joint committee, so that we can really start to dive in. But that process should be completed by both the House and Senate clerks momentarily. And then we should be able to dive in and see what might affect the districts.
Great. Ms. Visnick, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, thank you. Relative to the Fair Share Amendment, besides the split, how much to education, how much to transportation, has there been discussion about how within education the funds will be distributed? For instance, will the Chapter 70 formula or something like it be used? Or are we, how are the $510 million going to be distributed to the 351 communities across the Commonwealth?
Well, the governor did break it down, so just quickly, and these, I don't have dollars attached to these, but her buckets are stabilizing early ed care system, universal pre-K for gateway cities, expand access to high school students in college and career pathways, more accessible and affordable higher education, which is that $25 million for the community colleges. A new program that she has here, Mass Reconnect, a new program to cover cost of community college. That's what you just said, 25 plus years old. Tuition and fee stabilizers, again, higher ed. Financial aid expansion for higher ed. And those are her big buckets. But it's her budget that where she's concentrating those dollars. And we'll dissect that. And again, the House and Senate will react accordingly. And again, this is why this is a really important meeting, because when I go in to see the Chair of Ways and Means, I can we can advocate for local dollars for our school systems, because it does, from these buckets, doesn't seem like it's, going in, all going in the right direction. It needs to be split out a little more.
Dr. Trocek.
So I just would, the estimates that I've heard, it's say if there is, of the percentage of the money that is listed under education, 10% of it goes to K to 12, and it's to target early college. That's sort of a broad brush that was named. The 40%, the rest of it's going to higher ed or early care. So 10% of it K to 12, and of that targeted towards the early college pathways. That's a very broad brush, but that's what I read. Kind of.
It's early. It is
Mayor
early.
Cahill.
Thank you, Madam President. Welcome and thanks, and we've seen a lot of each other this week for all good reasons. I've got to ask, well, one thing, the fleet electrification and the bus question that was asked, and Representative Paracella mentioned the bipartisan infrastructure law. The Inflation Reduction Act has a fair amount of fleet electrification money, and some is targeted towards school buses. What we're finding is we've been tracking 20 or so different grant opportunities or programs. Most of them are at least in a first round, pushing all their money towards the same communities around the country. And we demographically won't qualify for funding when that's how they look at it. we're looking at much, out of the, say, 20 different funding streams, we're looking at about 7 or 8 of them for which we may be categorically eligible as a city. And then, but within that, where can we make a strong case and potentially get some grant funds? So on the school bus fleet electrification, they really are looking first round of all this into big metropolitan areas that have a lot of demographic challenges financially. So it may mean that in the near term, there's not something there for us, but we're going to keep tracking it. I want to point out and then ask a couple questions about the information that Senator Lovely shared. First, though, Representative Paracelli, you handed this out, and I just want to point out, I've been on the DLS locator looking at our proposed funding in House 1, and the unrestricted local aid number that you have down for FY23 is not the one that shows in the locator. So if, in fact, this is accurate, I just want to point out that the proposed increase in unrestricted general government aid, which is what municipalities have over last year, hopefully, to help with the cost of the city side of government, that's coming in at $137,000 only. And that's kind of typical.
Okay.
So I just flagged that. In terms, Senator, of what you found, Beverly as a community and as a school district for years has been above foundation and above minimum required effort, right? Minimum funding levels. Mm-hmm. And I think more anecdotally, even though everybody wants more each year, and as do I, up until the last 3 budgets with the Student Opportunity Act, we'd been in a pattern for some years of just a minimum aid increase in Chapter 70 of 150 to 200,000, leaving to the city that real heavy lift of providing what's needed each year in schools. So there's been a big chunk year over year of new local contribution into our schools. Thankfully, I think it's 2 of the last 3 budgets and then proposed here for a third time, we're seeing more significant Chapter 70 funds to our schools, and that's great. So whatever's gone on to change the way that the state legislature is looking at school districts and communities, I think, we need some answers because, it doesn't make sense that we would be considered as falling short of our commitment. It's been significant in year over year, and we're going to keep doing everything we can. But there's something there that we need better explained to us, or oftentimes those things, maybe they need to be recalculated. I don't know. And I don't know if that new way of looking at communities' efforts and contributions comes statutorily with the Student Opportunity Act. So I guess it's, as much as anything, we need to hear more.
So I can give you a little bit of information. I can give a little bit of information. I can't go into the whole thing, but the Student Opportunity Act did codify the aggregate wealth model. So that's what it comes out of. So that's what you're referencing. And it determined whether municipalities were it's sort of about how much of the gap was being filled. But you have to remember that the rapid increase to the foundations that were coming compressed that gap for people. And that's how communities were caught isn't the right word, but we're determined to be not meeting the target for minimum aid based upon that. So, the one thing that you spoke to a lot of communities, 288 communities were subject to that penalty based on the change in the foundation, that rapid change. So it's it's a formula that's built into the Student Opportunity Act that was determining, there's always been, if you remember, I've highlighted a couple of times, the minimum aid requirement is part of the formula. It's like 1/6 of the formula or something. And so that's where it's coming from. I don't have the actual numbers. I mean, I can tell you 175% of the foundation and required local contributions set at 82.5%, and then there's a penalty, but that's a lot more information. But it is definitely codified in Student Opportunity Act. That's where it's rising from, and that's how it happened. So it happened very rapidly since FY21.
Okay, well, thanks for that,
Yeah.
Dr.
So
Churchill.
there's information that I can share with you.
So 288 of 351 cities and towns?
Correct.
It's, okay.
And that's
So
why-
there are challenges here, and that sounds like a very artificial construct.
in
So
FY21
I need to spend some time with you folks.
Yep.
Appreciate
And that's
that.
why Senator Lewis's office raised it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm raising it tonight. Senator Lewis sees it as a problem.
Oh, yeah.
It needs to be fixed. So, thank you, Dr. Sharp.
I mean, you know,
That was a good explanation.
know.
So we need to circle back on it, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. My gosh.
We'll figure it out.
We got to,
Yep.
Okay,
I have a lot of thoughts in my head, but I'll stop.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Wisnick.
I'd like to pile on to the mayor. And first, I wonder if the quote-unquote penalty means we're just not getting as much Student Opportunity Act money as we could, as opposed to losing other money, right? So that's one clarification I would like. But I'd also like to really emphasize is not just did you say 288?
Yep.
It's not 288 out of 351, because not every single community, we have regional schools, right? So it's 288 out of maybe like, I don't know,
compared to 48 in FY21. So 48 and they don't call it a penalty, they call it subject to the below effort increment. And so that's a below effort increment. That's sort of what they built into the formula.
So my point, though, is it's not out of 351, because we do have regional school districts. It's actually a number fairly lower than 351. Thank you.
I don't know if you wanted to continue it out, or we can jump ahead to the third series of questions. And I think we started touching on them a bit with the electric school bus, but really it was a question from the committee about any green initiatives. So obviously our school has a commitment to start looking at our sustainability, and has established a committee with the superintendent to start looking at the ways that we operate our buildings, that we transport our students, that we just generally operate, to find ways that are more environmentally friendly, more fuel efficient. So wondering if there's anything on your radars in terms of providing more opportunity for solar canopies, such as what we've installed here at the middle school, at a high school, on the side hill, at City Hall, downtown parking areas. Any opportunities to fund conversion of heating systems to geothermal and to things that are more carbon neutral. Just anything along that front.
I mean, one of the things is like the school districts, when they're building new schools, they get a little bit extra reimbursement for having, LEED certification and things like that. Senator Lovely and I put in $200,000 in last year's budget for the city for the solar panels to help pay for that. So that was an earmark, a specific earmark for Beverly, as opposed to like some grant money. So we wanted to help out the city in that way. We're going to sort of delve into the some of the green initiatives. A lot of these like mass save programs are for residents, and I think there is talk, and there's been some bills filed to change the way mass save works. And I think it'd be great to have municipalities be eligible to tap into those funds as well for some of these green initiatives, because they were giving money, for example, for installing more fuel efficient gas furnaces and things like that, but it's still fossil fuels. So they're looking to change the way mass save works to get into more green energy sources.
If I could, Madam President, I think maybe just to kind of jog us all, the solar array on the old landfill between Brimble Ave and Centerville, and the more recent several site arrays, those both came through the state legislation. There have been 3 iterations of it. I think the most recent one was called the SMART legislation, but that's now been a few years since you folks last re-upped it. So I think as much as anything, that's the kind of program that, that each time that the legislature has passed a new version, it allows for so much new capacity, and then as that gets used up, question is, will there be another one? So, just to kind of go back to that, and I think it's been a good 3-4 years since you folks last considered and passed an update to that.
Okay, we'll go back and take a look. Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks, Mayor.
On to the fourth question. This topic area relates to food waste. It's sort of piling on some more green initiatives, but also talking about some of our food insecure people as well. The question is wondering whether some regulations actually apply to schools. You'll be happy to know that we do try to compost most of our back of the house, and part of the effort of our green team is to work on front of the house composting opportunities for our students. But the question was raised whether some of the new regulations would apply to schools, and what other expectations do you have around the areas of school cafeterias?
Yeah, my office reached over to the DEP on this, and yes, organic waste ban applies to school cafeterias. I think that you might have said it, a half a ton or more weekly that they've identified. An estimate of about 30 public schools that may be subject to this half a ton a week threshold. The Mass DEP has guidance and assistance through their Recycling Works Massachusetts program, Recycling Works in Massachusetts program, and then they do have a school green team program as well. Recycling Works has a tool to estimate food waste generation by sector, including elementary and secondary schools. That's the information I have, and it's just a little snippet, but we can certainly kind of peel that back and see how that would apply specifically to Beverly.
Thank you. That is interesting to know. I don't know if the subcommittee has looked into some of the resources available from the DEP.
Yes, so we, the school district has a operational sustainability committee, and that was a lot of those members you saw today at your visit. I wasn't there, so I apologize, but in fact, all of our schools now have green teams, and then there is grant money available to school districts who have green teams at each of their schools. And so there's a collaborative effort going on in between, I'm so not the best with names, but maybe Miss Twombly and the schools to make sure that the green teams are up and running, and then with Miss Keefe at the city level to make sure that we're tapping into those grant funds. And I am on a mailing list, and I go to, once a quarter, I go to a Mass DEP online, like seminar, webinar, whatever we want to call it, specifically about sustainability issues, and the Mass DEP has broken it up into subgroups. So there's one that's specifically looking into, for instance, food waste reduction. There's one that's they have, so you can register and attend. Just like we have our subcommittee meetings, you can go to the larger Mass DEP meeting and or the smaller subgroup meetings. So yes, our school district is trying to do that as part of the OSC, the Operational Sustainability Committee that Dr. Trocheck started.
There's been some legislation filed in prior sessions, and I think it got filed again this session too, to sponsored by like the Mass Restaurant Association, have their members be allowed to donate their excess food to like food pantries and things like that. I know like Endicott College gives some of their food to the River House, but I think they're worried about giving food and then having liability if something happens to somebody. So they want that protection, which to me makes sense. And they're trying to do a good deed. And so that hasn't passed yet, but that's something that's been floating around out there as well.
Yeah. Right. So there is some organization, and I really apologize because I'm horrible with names. Ask my children. But there's an organization that goes to restaurants and gives them literally the storage materials, and then somewhat teaches them the food handler rules. And so, for instance, the local Olive Garden on 114 participates in that program, and every so often somebody drives up to Olive Garden and picks up all the items that they've donated. And so the regulations are pretty clear, but it's an organization doing it versus a quote unquote mandate from the state, right? And so I think I included in my question a resolution that's out there for the city of Boston to mandate that restaurants like join a program like that, because it serves two purposes. One, it eliminates a whole bunch of waste that's going into the waste stream. And two, then those donations can address the food insecurities that are quite universal. So we have one restaurant that I know of around here that's participating, and that is the Olive Garden. But it would be, and you know, again, because of some organization that's driving that versus us trying to encourage that at the state level. So I understand the liability issue. The organization here in Beverly that gets those Olive Garden donations, they also are very picky about it. There's sometimes the thing isn't packaged correctly. It has to be sealed. It has to be dated, weighed, et cetera, et cetera. And so if there is a and then frozen, and right, and you can defrost and then reheat exactly once. That's what food handler rules say. And so if that package, for instance, isn't sealed correctly, then it has to get composted, unfortunately. But it's a wonderful, and we have the share table. We have a share table policy around the same idea of if you take your tray of food and you're not going to eat all of it, put what you're not going to eat, such as a banana, an apple, an orange, on a table that somebody else who's hungry can go take. It's a win-win. Unfortunately, not enough people are doing that out of the goodness of their heart. So having something at the state level that says y'all need to do this, even if it was in the schools, a mandate for share tables, would be, in my opinion, a win-win. Because as you know, we don't have any landfill left, and incineration is only contributing to the pollution. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for forwarding that article. It was really interesting. And Boston leads many times, the Boston City Council and the mayor lead many times on these initiatives. So I'm going to talk to Senator Edwards, who was a Boston City councilor, about this. But appreciate knowing about it. I don't know a lot about it, so it was really interesting. And how can we move in that direction? So great.
Okay. So I think we covered those two topics, really. The sixth question is specific to the high school, and there was a question regarding Beverly-specific variant contamination issues and whether there's any additional funding to support any testing of the stream that runs through our campus.
Yeah. I mean, really, Varian is supposed to pay for all the testing and cleanup and so forth. We did secure $100,000 for the city to do its own sort of independent analysis and review, and the city's looking at how to spend that money. But there's been a lot of meetings about that. Ms. Visnick has been to many of them, Senator Lovely, myself, the mayor, and so forth. So we're trying to keep on top of that and making sure that, and I think the DEP lately has been pretty good about, checking in on this and making sure that they're trying to do the right thing here, because it's gone on way too long. The residents of that area have been put up with this for over 20 years, longer than that. But, they've been submitting cleanup plans recently about what to do with the site. And so we're trying to make sure that we stay on top of it, for sure.
And we again, the office checked in with the DEP today, and so because there is a potentially responsible party, Varian, they're responsible for the cleanup. If there wasn't a responsible party, then there's an EPA removal program, but Varian is responsible. And DEP further said that if there was contamination found on the BHS campus, that the DEP would work with the appropriate party, Varian, to address the issue. So I think that's where the next step we need to go, is to determine if that contamination has migrated all the way down onto the high school campus and beyond. It actually would go right out to the Bass River, right? One of the Cummings Center, but we don't know. I mean, a lot of that, Mayor, you're in all those meetings. A lot of that contamination is on site under the Varian, under those buildings in a parking lot. They have found some downstream where that bedrock comes up. Do you want to talk to it?
not tonight, except to say that the plume does not extend as far as the high school.
Right.
Or any further downstream. I think and there's no data to date that shows that there's anything of concern with the water running through. I think really the question was more, should there be some more testing to really kind of clear that up or kind of reassure? And I think your answers are right. It's Very and not us that should have to pay for that. I think it's an open question. I'm not, is it, I don't know who asked it, but I think, we can all together follow up on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, and our final question is sort of how can we as a committee and individual committee members be good partners with you and your offices? We certainly like to let you know that we have needs, but if there are opportunities where we can have more dialogue like this, whether in a formal meeting or participating in subcommittee meetings or joining you at an event, please let us know.
Thank you. This is great. This is what we do at the beginning of every session, if you will. Just try to come in and visit with respective school committees to see what your thoughts are, especially it's at the beginning of budget. This is, again, very timely. I would welcome, coming back maybe, 3 times a year, 4 times a year, whatever you think is right, so that we can check in with each other and have these consistent kind of checkups. Or we can do it at the subcommittee level, whatever works for you. But this is helpful for us, so thank you.
Yeah, certainly helpful to hear from our local officials about what your concerns are and be in touch. And I'm a phone call away or an email or grab me on the street, whatever. Happy to chat.
Great. Mayor Cahill?
Could I, Madam President? I don't want to presume, and anybody can feel free to say sure but I know I chatted with each of you offline. It feels that from our perspective, probably the most important budget question to ask for your help with is to get some relief on the 14% private special ed school tuition increase. Now, I think there may be other things too, but it's projected to be well over $700,000 increase to us, and anything that can be done to mitigate against that will help us with our Chapter 70 money being put to best use and as much new money as the city can put into the budget being put to good use, as opposed to trying to plug that gap. Thanks.
Absolutely. And again, speaking to the Joint Committee on Education, it's just getting underway, but particularly to Senator Lewis, it's because I just have access to him, that very much aware of it, really, how much it's going to hurt a lot of municipalities. So we will circle back on that, and then that below effort issue. Please don't take that as, I know it sounds terrible, but it is formula based, as the superintendent said, and it's affecting a lot of communities, and that's why I brought it up, because it was brought up to me today and said, there's a problem here, and we're aware of it, and they're trying to fix it. So we'll circle back with you in short order.
Dr. Churchak?
So what did you say to say and also? I'm going to say one more and also. I also would put in front of you that, and I know you've heard a lot from the superintendent's group that we have, but the funding of circuit breaker, looking at the 90% funding of circuit breaker is another area that we're really advocating for. I'm hoping I'll see you on March 31st. If did you get my invitation to the legislative breakfast?
Is that up at Whittier?
It's at Whittier. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we're gathering as a superintendent's group a lot of information to share with all of the legislators at that point in time about that. But there are a couple of points, and that's another one that for Beverly, looking at that funding of circuit breaker at 90% is a really important piece that would also be very helpful too. So just throwing that one.
What was that date again?
I'm sorry?
What was the date again?
I think it's March 31st.
March 31st.
At
I know it's
Whittier.
in my calendar.
We want to be really respectful of your time and appreciate how much time you spent with us this evening. Ms. Bisnick, did you have one last and
I
also?
have a parting comment, which is that I believe that I saw via social media that Rep. Paracella has retired in his role as a defender of our democracy, even in his part-time role. And I just wanted to take this opportunity. That's why I asked you to ask him to say the pledge this evening, but to thank you for your service, because all of us can do what we do because of people like you who do what you do. So thank you, sir.
Really appreciate that. "29 years flies by." But, it was a good ride. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll let you off of the hot seat. We're going to put our student representative in the hot seat next and ask her all about our high school goings-ons. I don't know if you wanted to stay. You're welcome to stay, but if you have other needs, you should feel free to leave. Just make sure you turn your mic off. Thanks.
And we will circle back shortly.
Okay. Thank you so much. And without further ado, Kaylee, I hope your homework doesn't suffer, but it's so important to have this opportunity.
All that stuff I just learned was so interesting. Like, I didn't even know about like the school lunches, and I feel like more high schoolers should know about that, because like I feel like we should thank you all, and it was just like that's just something that everyone should be grateful for. Well, coming from high school students, thank you. Okay. So for the month of March, I don't know how many of you all know this or have kids that go to the BHS, but this weekend, starting tomorrow, there is the DECA States Conference for DECA students, and which is like a marketing conference that they will be competing in. Hopefully, a bunch of people make it to nationals. And on Friday, March 17th, to Sunday, March 19th, there will be the production of the Funny Girl play that many high school students have been working months and hours, long hours after school on. And on March 28th to March 29th, ELA MCAS will be held for sophomores, where freshmen, juniors, and seniors do get a late dismissal, or they arrive later in the school day. And of course, everyone knows March as the month that has no vacations, but we will be looking forward to April. So those are the updates of March.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh. Mayor Cahill.
Can we prevail upon Kaylee to tell us about her star turn today?
Sure, please.
So Bridget Booth and I, we are the co-presidents of Green Club, and we were given the opportunity to come to the middle school today and introduce Lieutenant Governor Driscoll and just learn about all the hybrid and electric school buses that we have here, like in the school parking lot, which is really interesting. We met some of the future high school Green Club members from the Green team, and it was nice to see just a big group of younger generations, just like younger kids, also take interest in the environment. Because like I personally remember my first time where Change is Simple like came to my elementary school, and that was honestly just like I still remember like every detail of it, and it was a really nice experience. So I hope that for all those kids who were at the event today will forever remember that, and take that memory throughout their years. So it was really nice. I talked to Lieutenant Governor Driscoll for a bit. She's very nice and sweet. Just everyone was there. It was nice to be in a group with people who care about the environment and make changes. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that additional opportunity that you've had, and thank you for your time. If you need to go do your homework, we certainly understand if you want to leave us to get through the rest of our agenda. Not to worry. We're not offended. Thanks. Next on our agenda, we have our approval of meeting records from our February 8th meeting. I'm looking for a motion to approve. Thank you, Mayor Cahill. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bisnick. Were there any edits or corrections that any member wished to put forward? I'm not seeing any hands. I'll do a roll call vote. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Bisnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes, 7-0. Thank you so much. Now we're at the part of our agenda where we have a forum for resident voice. We did have 7 members of the public wish to have their comments read into the record this evening. I always feel like I need to do a Hooked on Phonics worked for me when I do so much reading, but I have my readers. These are progressives. Okay. I'm going to take them in alphabetical order, except for the last one that just arrived because it's on my phone only. So this first letter we received is from Julia and Ben Francavilla, and they live at 40 Cross Street. To whom it may concern, my husband and I are writing as parents of a kindergartner at the Cove Elementary School. First off, please know we appreciate the Superintendent Churocek, School Committee, Mayor Cahill, and City Council authorizing that the district spend ESSER funds to hire a district elementary librarian for the past fiscal year 2023. Furthermore, we greatly appreciate all of Laura Brosnan's hard work. We are very aware of how our kindergartner and her older friends appreciate and thrive with access to the library. Access to libraries and books at a young age impact literacy, impact ability to learn, to search catalogs, Dewey Decimal System, and have other adults spark interest in learning and helping foster their personal interests. Lastly, access to library and supportive staff further ensures greater equity throughout and among the elementary schools so that the libraries are not completely dependent upon PTOs, while parents and caregivers still provide volunteer hours in all of our libraries. We understand that the budget season is now underway for fiscal year 2024 and request your support in renewing this librarian position and fold it into the annual budget. Thank you for your time, your work, and continued support of the elementary school libraries. Julia and Ben Francavilla. No, I think all of these are on the same topic. This next one comes from Annie Hartunian of 12 Bowden Street. Hello, I am writing to share my appreciation for the elementary library position that was created this year. As a parent and former public school educator in a neighboring district, I was initially shocked to learn that the library positions did not exist in the elementary level in Beverly. I have witnessed firsthand just how influential school libraries can be when they are effectively curated and managed to support learning in the context of the curricular and personal interests. I've watched my own first grade daughter fall in love with the Cove School Library this year and begin to explore and expand her own interests and develop a profound love for reading. I sincerely thank you for bringing this position back into our schools and hope that it will be renewed for next year and years to come. And that's Annie Hartunian. Next is Jenny Lane of 37 Chase Street, Unit 1. I want to express my sincere thanks for hiring a librarian this year for our kiddos. What a gift to have someone there for them to guide them in their knowledge. Their deep understanding of the library goes far beyond just knowing where the books are. It's teaching our children how to research, utilize all of the resources we have in the community, and connecting children to the world beyond Imagina. Thank you for allowing our children to have this gift as they continue growing in the Beverly school system. We look forward to hopefully having this position far into the future. And I should add, it's actually Jenny and Zion Lane of 37 Chase Street. Allison Lee of 3 Smithson Drive submits, I'm sorry I'm unable to attend this meeting in person. Thank you for the opportunity to submit this letter in support of the continued funding of the employment of an elementary school librarian. As a parent of a kindergartner and third grader at Cove, I was thrilled when I heard last year that funding was approved to hire an elementary school librarian. A fully functioning school library, led by a qualified and engaged school librarian, is such an important piece of a well-rounded literacy curriculum. The opportunity to independently choose, learn how to search bookshelves, and enrich their own interests through independent reading is foundational to encourage the love of books in our elementary school students. During my PTO volunteer hours in the library, I have had the opportunity to work with Laura Brosnan and have seen firsthand what a positive impact she has. Both the management of the physical library space and the library curriculum have been improved thanks to her role at the school. We are lucky to have so many reliable volunteers who have kept the library running over the past several years. However, even the best of parent helpers don't have the expertise or experience to ensure that the students are getting the full value of our school libraries. Having and retaining an elementary school librarian like Ms. Brosnan is especially important to ensuring that the library experience for students is equitable across all 5 elementary schools and not fully dependent on the level of PTO involvement. As budget discussions continue, I urge you to please renew this valuable position that enriches all of our elementary schools. Thank you for all of the thoughtful work you do in commitment to our students and our Beverly community. Allison Lee, Cove Elementary School parent, 3 Smithson Drive. The next one is from Caitlin Lubinsky of 231 Hale Street. Dear School Committee, I am a mother of 2 children at Cove Elementary School, a 1st grader and a 3rd grader. I have so appreciated the fact that this past year, Superintendent Chorochek, the school committee, Mayor Cahill, and the city have authorized funds to hire a district elementary librarian for our schools. It's already clear that Laura Brosnan has been making a much-needed difference in our library. Books are being organized, cleaned out, and replenished. Volunteers are being organized and supported. There is a new sense of excitement amongst the kids when they come to the library, and I hope that grows and grows as they see new books that are pertinent to their interests beginning to populate the shelves. Before Ms. Brosnan arrived, I was troubled by the lack of resourcing in the library. I have faithfully volunteered there since my children started school, as have many, many parents. But the task of running a library is beyond the bandwidth of volunteers to execute well, and in my opinion, it has taxed our already active PTO, distracting them from the other issues that need our focus. Each week, I have to direct children to the same limited selection of out-of-date and tattered nonfiction book series about sports and animals. Books about major historical events and scientific topics of interest to the kids are completely missing. The historical fiction and other classic children's literature series that should be well supplied and easily available are either all checked out, missing, or not available in the first place. The library computer and other digital tools are woefully out of date as well. As a result, for years, we have been missing a huge opportunity for educating our kids. If reading is one of the most important things we can teach our children and fundamental to their future ability to acquire knowledge, then the library and its resources, both digital and print, should be one of our highest priorities. Furthermore, we need to educate kids on how to access these resources, how to navigate a library database and use the Dewey Decimal System, something a librarian has the expertise to do. I am grateful that in hiring a librarian, we have taken a step in the right direction, and I hope that you consider the 2024 budget. As you consider, you would renew this position and continue to prioritize any available funds towards new books and other library resources. Thank you so much for your time and for all of the work you do to support our children in schools. Gratefully, Caitlin Lubinsky, 231 Hale Street. This one is from Danielle Spang, 16 Mulberry Street. My name is Danielle Spang. I live at 16 Mulberry Street in Beverly, and I am sharing my own thoughts, not on behalf of any group. I would like to thank Dr. Chorochek, the school committee, Mayor Cahill, the city council, for hiring a district elementary librarian this past year, fiscal year, with ESSER funds. My daughter Quinn is in the 1st grade at Cove Elementary School, and we can already see the huge impact librarian Laura Brosnan is having in the Cove Library. I have volunteered with Quinn's class for the past 2 years, and this year Ms. Brosnan has put up themed book displays, suggested books to match students' interest, suggested improvements for coordinating volunteers, and suggested volunteers maintain different sections of the library so that they are in order. Ms. Brosnan is also working on a book donation policy for the library to build and grow the school library collection. Our family is grateful and proud to have a professional, credentialed school librarian in the school, creating a steady stream of new, age-appropriate books that have been shown to nearly triple the interest in reading within months. Harry, Louis, an assessment of impact on the first there's a citation, sorry. We thank you for ensuring greater equity through the district by ensuring that the elementary libraries are staffed and open regardless of the number of parent caregiver volunteers. I fully support Ms. Brosnan's effort to build up each of the school library collections and to ensure all students throughout the district have access to a steady stream of new, age-appropriate books to cultivate and foster their interest in reading. I understand that budget season is kicking off for fiscal year 2024, and I want to request your support in renewing the elementary school librarian position permanently. Thank you for your time, continued support for the elementary school libraries, as well as for the work that you do for Beverly Schools. Best, Danielle Sprang, 16 Mulberry Street. And one more. And I haven't read this one at all. It's the same topic. Thank you for approving the ESSER. Oh, who is this from? This is from Susie Hurley of 256 Lothrop Street. Thank you for approving the ESSER funds and hiring a district elementary librarian for this school year. I am writing to say how valuable having a librarian in the elementary school is, and my hope that the district will continue this position and be able to fold it into the annual budget. As a volunteer at the Cove School Library, I see firsthand how important it is and helpful it is to have a librarian. Access to the library enhances literacy and helps spark interest in learning and fosters the children's personal interests. Laura Brosnan has done a wonderful job and is making a noticeable change within the school and provides crucial guidance to improve the library. She has done so much work behind the scenes to update the catalog and curriculum. We have made significant progress, but still have a long way to go to realize the full potential of the library as a school resource. We are so excited to have Laura Brosnan as the district elementary librarian and hope that she is able to continue in that role. Thank you for your time and continued support for the elementary school libraries and all the work you do for our schools. Susan Hurley, 256 Lothrop Street. And just checking the room, I don't think we have anyone else that's signed up. And Ms. Bergeron, no more resident voice emails. Okay. Thank you for putting up with my reading. It gets harder and harder. The letters get smaller and smaller as you get older.
Well done, Madam President.
Well, thank you. I know every time I go to visit a PTO, I always say, this is budget season. If there's something on your mind, make sure you let us know and your constituents know. And this is one way that residents have the opportunity to reach out to us. So thank you. Next on our agenda are items by consensus. This week we have warrants A, B, and C as listed on the agenda. I won't read the amounts, but I will look for a motion to approve the group A, B, and C.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Second.
Oh, I just, thank you, Ms. Quayle. I just caught Ms. Robinson first. It's the internet lag, I'm sure. Are there any questions or concerns? Typically, we just do our roll call vote. Okay, Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Quayle?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes, 7-0. Thank you. From the chair, just two quick reminders. We do have finance and facilities and then our joint council meeting scheduled for March 22nd. And I believe we'll be having that in the auditorium here so that there's plenty of space for our city council members and us. And we'll work with BevCam to make sure we can get that broadcast. I also wanted to note that the Standing Committee for Negotiations will be publishing an agenda for a meeting on Tuesday afternoon. We'll be meeting with our AFSCME units who are looking to bargain for their new contract. That first meeting will be our ground rules for the AFSCME units. And then our policy subcommittee, I know that we'll get to that part of our agenda, will also be planning a meeting possibly on the 15th to do some policy work. So a lot of meetings in March. Mayor Cahill?
Are you done with that?
Yep.
Could I, just to build the anticipation for the superintendent's reports, could I request a very brief recess?
Sure. Why don't we take a 5-minute recess? Thank you. Okay, it's 8:53 and we're calling back to order. At this time, I'd like to turn our agenda over to Dr. Churchek.
All right, thank you, everybody. In my report this evening, I have 3 items, 2 of them voting, so I'm going to open up quickly by inviting Christina Leal to take over the mic here and walk us through a request for some food service positions. So Christina, all you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me tonight. And as always, our goal in food service is to feed as many students as possible a healthy and nutritious meal. And I believe we have done that. So this is a screenshot over the last 3 years, not including school year 2021. I did eliminate that. So I did go back to school year 1920 all the way up to 22-23 this year. And this is breakfast. And as you can see, we have skyrocketed in some of the schools. Our participation in breakfast has really gone up in all the elementary schools. So we are really happy to see that. We are almost at, breakfast, we're almost at about 20% for participation. And we have never been that high overall as the district in elementary schools for breakfast. And as lunchtime, that trend totally continues. And we are actually at 60% participation for all the elementary schools this year, as opposed to in school year 20, we were only at about 40%. So we have really gone up over in participation in feeding the kids. The trend does continue as well over at the middle school and the high school. Breakfast, we are over at 15% at the middle school, and the high school is not as high, but they're coming in with breakfast themselves usually. And then for lunch, we are at about 60% over at the middle school and around 40% for lunch over at the high school participation. Once again, higher than we have seen over the past 3 years. So we are really excited with those numbers, definitely feeding as many kids as we possibly can. But with that, we are looking for added staff. So the USDA does have guidelines to determine meals per labor hour to see kind of where we should be staffing wise. I do look at this usually about 3 times a year just to see if we are on trend, where we might need staff. And based on this year's meals per labor hour, I would like to add 3 positions to the department. All the positions can be supported and totally funded from the revolving account and revenues from the food service department. I would like to add 1 17.5-hour position and 2 15-hour positions. My plan is to immediately fill or attempt to fill. We have several unfilled positions right now, but I would like to fill one of the 17.5-hour positions and one of the 15-hour positions. And one of the schools is kind of trending in the direction that they would need a 3rd person. And that's why I would like to have that additional 15-hour position if we see them actually needing it. So I am asking to consider those 3 positions for the department. Once again, that will be funded through the department revenue. Any questions?
Ms. Visnick?
Hi, Ms. Leal. I wish to ask you about your choice of "I would like to." Is it not like our special ed mandates? Is it not that the MPLH is mandating that we add 2 of the positions, and so really your request is to approve ahead of time the 3rd position so that if the trends keep going, we would have prior approval to fill the 3rd position?
The meals per labor hour, it's kind of more like a guideline and a suggestions based on the kind of cooking you do, the kind of kitchen establishments. So the range is quite wide, but we would definitely fall. So I think they would suggest it as well or mandate it as well. So yes, if that answers your question.
In a roundabout way.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that we approve these positions.
I'll second that motion for discussion. Ms. Leal, it sounds like you know a couple of schools that need a third person, and you also mentioned that you have been attempting to fill some positions. How likely is it that you'll be able to meet this sort of guideline for MPLH and actually hire for those positions?
We definitely are struggling. Currently have 4 open positions that we have been trying to fill. So staffing is a struggle. We are obviously still getting in there and feeding as many kids. I think posting it starts the process, and hopefully we have postings on Indeed. I'm hoping that we can get them filled and we can start next year, especially fully staffed, but the goal obviously is to get them in as soon as possible.
And then just to piggyback, the other comment I heard you say is the types of cooking. Would these positions enable us to handle some of the organic and farm-raised vegetables in a more efficient or more effective way to provide more choice to our students? Or how are you envisioning having more hands in the kitchen?
Mostly it's going to be during the service time, especially at one particular elementary school. They're serving almost 300 students, over 300 on a few days. So to get the kids through the line, it takes a lot. We are already using a lot of farm to school or fresh produce. So we currently are doing a lot of that. But yes, we could definitely continue that trend and do more with more staff available.
Thanks. Dr. Silva first.
So there are, I heard that there are positions currently being currently posted. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How many positions are posted already?
We currently have 4 open.
So if those positions were, if you found staff for those positions, how would you feel about the need for the additional headcount at the moment?
We would still need it because right now I'm filling the vacant positions with staff members that are off those days to make sure we do have coverage in the kitchens. So it would put everyone the hours that they are supposed to work at 17 and a half hours, as opposing to some working substantially more to cover those shifts that I do have open.
Okay, great.
Thank you for that clarification. And Ms. Visnick?
I wonder if combining some of the part-time positions to be a full-time position, which would then be eligible for, would be somebody might want more hours, right? As opposed to somebody might not want a 17.5 hour position. So have you thought about that at all? That was really bad English. I apologize. I'm hoping you can translate that.
No, I've talked to Jean about that before. We have discussed that as well.
What was that question?
Mayor Cahill?
Thanks, Madam President. Ms. Leal, I'd like to understand a little better the guidelines. I mean, I get the point. They're kind of, it's like a caseload guideline in other fields. So, but how many different guidelines are you working with, based on the different type of work folks are doing, and what are some of those numbers? How many meals per labor hour should one person be responsible for preparing and serving, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. So it ranges. In elementary schools, they have between 14 meals per labor hour up to 22 meals per labor hour. And once again, it depends on, are they getting food from another kitchen and just serving it? Are they doing any scratch cooking? So you kind of have to take a guideline of what we're doing. One of the elementary schools that I was particularly looking at had a meals per labor hour of 25. So it is how many meals they're serving the whole day for each hour in that kitchen. And so it was at about 25, which is above all the guidelines that they have for an elementary school.
And typically somebody's working, 3-4 hours? 3 sounds like not enough. They're working about 4 hours a day?
So, yep. So in the elementary school, each school has a kitchen manager, which is at 7 hours. And then they have 2 3.5-hour position. So it equals 14 hours each day.
Okay, and so there's,
There is
no, you go, please, sorry.
there's a percentage, so a lunch counts as a lunch and a breakfast counts as 1/3 of a meal when you're calculating the formula.
And just with that one school, just to make it real concrete, how many meals are served? And with 14 hours, how is that breaking down to, how many per labor
So
hour?
at that one particular school, we're serving on average over 300 lunches or around 300 lunches a day.
Okay.
And there have been days we've topped over 200 for breakfast.
And-
And right now, there's only 2 people in that kitchen.
So 300 and 200, and the 200 is really about 70. So 370 divided by 14 hours gets you to a number that's too many meals, so we're understaffed, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Dr. Silva?
So I just wanted to point out that if free lunches go away, it looks like we have funding. We heard this evening that the state was going to fund that for another year.
It's through this school year.
Through this school year.
Through this
Okay.
school year. They had to get an extension because they ran out of money.
Right.
So they had to get an extension, so it's through this school year.
Okay, so if that were not funded for next year, would you foresee your numbers declining?
I would hate to see that happening. I do not think it would be happening because we do not turn any child away even prior. So I don't think the counts would end up going down.
I'm going to call myself again. I think one of the benefits that I heard you mention, obviously this is a cost neutral decision for the school committee because it would be covered by your revenues and your revolving account. But one of the benefits that I heard you talk about was getting the students through the line faster. I think a common complaint I've heard from my own students who get hot lunch is that they barely have time to eat it by the time they get through the line. And for that reason, we do have a motion on the table. And so I'd like to lend my support to approving these positions and crossing my fingers that you can find the extra hands to help deliver these meals to students. And I think that the work that you're doing is certainly going to keep students interested in, having the hot lunch options on breakfast options. So if no more questions, I'll do a roll call vote.
I do have a question. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see you. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Ms. Coelho's hand's up too. So hi there. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on Ms. Visnick's question. Is it helpful at all to offer a full-time position to those who are already on the staff?
It definitely could be. It's something we have to talk about as far as then it becomes a benefited position and looking at that. But it's definitely something we could think about. We just really wanted to get something so I could start getting positions and hopefully get people in.
So it's a matter of the position type would have to change before that could happen, and that would potentially be another delay, is what we're saying.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for pointing out, Ms. Coelho. The icon is on your cabinets, maybe, and I can't quite see it. There we go. Okay.
Thank you. Nope, I was actually just going to piggyback off of Lorinda, and Kenan brought it up. I know that I do keep in touch with some of the elementary schools and some of my former coworkers who have been pulling extra shifts to make sure that the kitchen runs smoothly, and some of them have already been working some of these hours. Why not let some of these dedicated employees who have been there allowed to work a 32.5-hour work week and let them keep the hours that they're currently working to help keep the kitchen running?
Okay, I see one more hand, Ms. Visnick.
I think for the short term, there's a motion on the table, and I'm happy as the chair of FNF to take an action item to have that discussion with Ms. Sherburne and Ms. Leal at a subsequent FNF meeting, because I'm sure it'll be a more lengthy discussion. I think that I I did a little math in my little notebook here. I understand now where the 17.5 comes from, because we divide the day in 3.5 hour chunks, and the staff is probably either working breakfast or lunch, right? So that makes sense. I understand that now, but having that bigger discussion about whether we want to combine the positions and the ramifications of that, I think we need some more discussion. So I would like to offer to put that in F&F. And see what we can, if we can pass the motion that's on the table now, or at least bring it to the vote, and then potentially we'll bring something different forward out of F&F, potentially for next year, right?
Okay. So this is a motion to increase the head count for one at 1.75 hour position and 2 at 15-hour position. 17.5 and 2 at 15. So 3 part-time positions. Thank you. Mayor Cahill.
Yes.
Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Visnick.
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. 7-0. Good luck, Ms. Leal. Get those postings.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. So I want, and Christina said thank you too, so I'm going ahead in my thing. So what I wanted to do tonight, and it's not February 8th, it's March 8th, but we're in a time warp here. So I apologize for that. I just wanted to give you an update of where we are in the budget process. We have been working, and it follows along with the discussion and conversation we had earlier with the legislators. The budget process is a little bit off this year because the governor, we have a new governor in office, and she did not release that budget. It was not required to, nor did she release her budget till March 1st. So we were a little bit, kind of all in waiting for what was going to come and how that was going to look and how that would roll out. What I have done, and what you have a copy of, what I have shared with you in your documentation is a copy of a current worksheet, and this is really just a worksheet. We call it the orange sheet. It's a live document that we utilize throughout the process to kind of track comings and goings. This is by no means our final proposal, but I just wanted to let you all know where we were right now in our process as we move forward. Our goal is to present a level-serviced budget to the committee based upon the needs that we have, enrollment changes, and any of the other things that come up. So as always, I always start with my goal areas. Just a reminder that, when we're making our decisions and when we're having our discussions, we're always focused on the goal areas that we as a committee have agreed upon. So and a reminder, I will always throw this reminder at the beginning that there are factors that impact the budget process as we go forward. Contractual obligations. Ms. Abel remarked earlier, we're beginning our negotiations for our upcoming ASME units. Enrollments are something that we watch on a regular basis. We have made a commitment to resource for high-quality curriculum materials. We consider department funding requests and special education increases. And so what I really just wanted to do is just give you an update of where we are on the worksheet. I have summarized in my slide here, this orange, the large orange sheet. As you can see, we look at each building individually, but then we come with an elementary total. So in total, where we sit right now at the elementary level is that we're requesting a 0.57 increase for FTEs. Every year I come to you, there are comings and goings on staffing patterns at elementary. We have 4 sections of a 3rd grade that then move to 4th grade, or we have 5 sections of or 3 sections of a 3rd grade that then move to 4. So we have adds and adds and takeaways for the staffing there. The one area that we have an increase is there's a request for a nurse in the AIM program, a 0.57 nurse to support some medically fragile students that are that might be enrolled in our AIM program. So that's a request that's on the table based upon that. Otherwise, it's sort of been a wash for the comings and goings of where people go. In your breakdown, you can see there's an additional paragraph paraprofessional request. That is a specific paraprofessional for a special education need and incorporated in. Ms. Visnick, you said it earlier. Sometimes we can't say no to some of the things that come from special education. And then the reduction of K at Centerville. I know that those of you who have been here for a while, our kindergarten, we have 16 sections of kindergarten. There's one section that sometimes travels from building to building based upon enrollments. And what we do is we watch our kindergarten enrollments as they come in. Last year, there were 4 sections at Centerville. The year before that, there were 4 sections at Hannah. My prediction right now, based upon the current enrollments that we have, is that that 4th section would actually be at North Beverly this year. That's what creates that fluctuation of class cohort sizes as we go. But we're on track for our enrollment at kindergarten, similar to it as it has been for the past couple of years. It's just where the students live when they're enrolling. And so that's really the only changes that we have in the elementary levels. In this worksheet, that doesn't mean that, there won't be others as we watch enrollments. We have, I will say, we have a grade level at Ayers that we have on a watch for. The numbers are creeping up. We have a grade at North Beverly that we're watching as well. So we keep our eye on those, but at this point, that's where we are. At the middle school, we are looking at 2 teachers, a special education teacher, as we are required to have, it will require, enrollments will require a 4th ATTAIN program. That's our program for students on the autism spectrum, and an additional L teacher. Our enrollments of students, particularly newcomers at the in the middle school, but those are students that are coming that are English learners, and our ratios for English learners at the middle school is really high. So those are the requests at the middle school on this worksheet. They're not the only requests, they're the ones that we fine-tuned to date. And at the high school, again, additional paraprofessional for our L program up there. They do a lot, they have a lot of students who require support within their classrooms, and so that was a request for them. And then under special education, where we are looking at 2 positions that are designated to support our programs across the district, one BCBA and one speech therapist. And then I have reflected the often referenced OSD 14% increase private school tuitions for $775,000. So those are just some of the numbers that we're working with as we try to fine tune this budget. We know that our leases for transportation, based upon buses that dropped off and buses that will be coming on in leases, is an increase of $75,000. We have a nurse, a float nurse. The float nurse was previously, I don't know if you remember, Ms. Elder was able to secure a grant through DPH that covered one of the costs of our nurses. So that nurse was covered by a grant, but we need to move that back on to the appropriated. And then some really cost of doing business for buildings and grounds, the cost of supplies. We're looking to add an additional $20,000 in our rubbish and trucking in anticipation of any of the work that we're doing around composting or any of those things. But again, rough numbers at this point in time. And when we look to other instructional areas, this is health insurance. Health insurance would be either for the new positions and or for the 3% increase that Brian Ailes is suggesting at this point in time. We're keeping our fingers crossed that that remains to be the number, but that reflects a 3% increase in our cost for health care. And then finally, we made that commitment last year that we would be rolling in the remainder of the salaries for both the Director of Opportunity Access and Equity and the Director of English Learner positions. We moved, if you remember, 50% of their positions in last year, and this would entail moving the other half of those positions in. And so that's where we are. I wanted to, and I don't know if it's helpful or not, Bethany had prepared this 3 slides to just kind of explain to all of you what those OSD, we had lots of questions about how come we got them, where did they come from, what does that mean? And so I'm giving full credit to Bethany. Is she still on the, Bethany, would you like to walk us through this, or are you available to that, or I'm happy to do it if you're not? Maybe not. Okay. I'll be happy to do it. So, but Bethany's the author of these slides because she's the one that did it. So first of all, these were questions that she had been asked by Jean to bring forward. We were going to bring them forward to FNF, and then we didn't have our FNF meeting the last time. So, who sets private tuition rates? So we've been referencing all along OSD, Operational Services Division, is responsible for setting the tuition prices for more than 200 approved special education programs and approximately 100 private schools. The price setting is necessary to accommodate the students with needs that can't be met. So these are students that we have placed. They're Beverly residents. They would be in our Beverly schools. We have deemed that a more restrictive setting is necessary for them to meet their needs. And OSD also sets the price for services that aren't included in the tuition, such as one-to-one aids. So all this price setting is set by the Operational Services Division. They also set the anticipated tuition increases. This is done separate. We do not have a voice or a say in how these tuitions are increased. The Operational Services Division makes all of these determinations about these tuition increases. And this year, they determined that they were authorizing an increase in special education private school tuitions for FY24 at 14%. It's up. Let me just remind you that in FY22, it was 2.5%. That's a more typical increase. The average increase since 2011 has been 1.8%. But the 14% increase was approved this year. Yep.
So I heard you say that you're not involved in the.
Superintendents don't have a say.
Why isn't there a dialogue, or why isn't?
Mayor Cahill.
I just wanted to be helpful because I'm a big fan of the Umbrella Academy, and they have something called the commission there. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows what Operational Services Division is. They are within the state's Executive Office of Administration and Finance. So they answer directly to the governor, right? And they kind of build the overall state budget and are responsible there. So it's not within DESE. It's not within the Executive Office of Education. It's within A&F directly to the governor. That's not to say the conversation shouldn't happen.
Right.
But there's not a natural,
and I will
as
say,
there is with
right.
education and the superintendents.
Right. And I will say, I have been told that the private schools and have made a compelling case that their costs have increased, their wages have increased, and so they went directly and made this compelling case, and that the 14% was warranted, and the OSD approved it. So that's how the process goes. But it was unexpected. And when we say unexpected, the average increase since 2011 has been 1.8%, and this year it was 14%.
But with this happening, it seems like there should be some action to have some type of, dialogue or some type of check.
There's been a lot of dialogue since it happened, I will tell you.
To make sure that it doesn't happen again, like next year there's
But there are no
50.
controls, so I agree, but we don't really have those controls, I will say, the mayors, the mayor MMA, is that who you guys are? Everyone is advocating their legislators, just like we did this evening, and like we will continue to do, because that's really the only course of action that's left for us to do, is to advocate. The legislator, the governor's budget has come out, the legislator, they can't change that percentage, but they can hopefully, maybe, what we're looking for is to provide some supplemental relief for the districts who have been hit with this this increase.
But that's just a Band-Aid, right? That's just a Band-Aid
Well, I'll
for that
explain to you in
one.
a few minutes why not. It's actually, there's more to it than just that.
Okay.
Yep.
I saw Ms. Bisnick's hand, and then we'll go back to the mayor.
I'm wondering how the OSD relates to when sometimes we get a bill in the middle of the year that gets to be able to be backdated. Did I say enough yet that you can translate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. But those increases previously, so would be one private school might have advocated for a particular increase, and it gets approved, and it's retro. So yes, that is similar, but this is across the board, all the MAP schools, or whatever they're called.
Okay, Mayor Cahill.
Thank you.
I won't keep going here, but I think this language might be helpful. it's a section of Mass General Law that has this Operational Services Division establish a Bureau of Purchased Services. Purchased services is essentially buying private services, right? So very big in the social services sector. You think of a lot of the private providers of services to people with various disabilities. That's one thing. The network of private schools that we send some of our kids to is another example of that purchased service, and that's why it's here. I think, and I know Dr. Churchick has a lot more to share. I mean, I think we all have concerns with how much is going up in 1 year.
Right.
I think there's a lot in the governor's proposed budget we like. I think there's more we want to see accomplished through the House and Senate budget process, and maybe this is maybe that's the venue, and that's the way to to help us ease into that one big increase in 1 year.
So just to be clear, one of the positives about the increase is that it's eligible for circuit breaker reimbursement. But remember, circuit breaker reimbursement comes a year in arrears. So we have to bite the bullet for 1 year. That doesn't mean the full 775 will be reclaimed, although the plea that I made at the end for the 90% circuit breaker rather than 75% would help cut away at even more of that. But the way circuit breaker works, there's a foundation number, 49,000, I use round numbers, and then anything over the 49,000, we get 75% reimbursement on. So this 775 is all eligible for that, right? So that money, so for us, it's a hit in FY24, but some of that money will be reclaimed in FY25 on the circuit breaker. So that's why it's not we're calling it a kind of a 1 year problem, like something that could maybe be solved with some supplemental money to municipalities right now to just help those of us who are getting hit with a really large unexpected expense at budget time, right, as we're trying to create our budget. So that's one piece of the puzzle, which is another reason why this is still a worksheet in progress, because we're hopeful. We don't know what could come. There are opportunities for the state to provide relief. It sounds as if, so originally the cost to districts was estimated at about 93 million. And at this point, I think somewhere in the governor's budget, there's a line item for 20 million, which means that somebody's going to get some relief, but we don't know how that money's going to be distributed. To Ms. Visnick's question about, is it going to be under the process of Chapter 70 funding? Is it going to be based upon how much your out-of-district costs increase? There are lots of ideas that are on the table, but we don't really know right now. So it's just something that I want to make sure we're all aware of, but I also do not believe that we've heard the end of how that relief may or may not come to us. So if that helps. Again, Bethany just walked us through. We have in Beverly 40 to 45 students across 25 private school placements. So therefore, that 14% is estimated at $775,000. This does not include tuition increases at collaboratives. We know that our North Shore Consortium increase is going to be at 5% for our next year for our kids that are at the consortium. This covers just those 40 to 45 students that we have at the 25 private schools.
Ms. Visnick?
And to be very clear, these are students, I should ask it as a question as opposed to asserting a statement. Is it true that these services are for students that we cannot serve? Like even if the wonderful Miss Spalansky added a whole bunch of more services in our district, we were not likely to serve those 40 to 45 students?
So I will say to you that there are very clear procedures in place for determining whether a student requires an out-of-district placement. So yes, I would say that a team meeting process has determined that these students are best served in these private schools. And these private schools could be day schools or residential schools.
Right. I apologize. I wish to ask, is there any chance that the Beverly School District would ever have one of those programs in-house?
No.
Okay, thank you.
the level of service is extremely high, and, so for them, I would say, I would not say never, but I would say that it's unlikely that we would have the resources to build a program that would be able to meet the level of need that the students display.
I mean, doing the math, it seems like it's potentially a correction because the per student cost is about 17,500 if you divide.
Well, it
that.
all depends, because it's not an easily dividable thing, because some of them are residential placements that are $400,000 a year, and some of them are day placements that are $198,000. So it's not, there's not a simple number that goes across. It really was based upon, and the last line, I mean, the case was made by the private schools to OSD that due to inflation, the cost of living, and their difficulties to counter the staffing shortages that they were having, that they needed that. And that's, it's not a per pupil or even, because but that's one way of looking at it, but that's not how it plays out when you put it on the table.
I think the third bullet is instructional.
The average increase.
The average increase for 11 years has been under 2%.
Right.
So,
Yep.
which leads to the fourth bullet.
Yep.
I'm just going to ask a quick question. Beverly has a number of private schools that are available, and I'm wondering that some of these placements are.
Some of those are, yep.
Right
private,
here in
yep.
our neck of the woods,
Yep.
as I like to
They
say.
are.
Ms. Visnick.
I wish to ask Dr. Trocek, can you repeat, you said something about we're going to have a 5% increase at the North Shore Consortium, and that is above and beyond this 14% increase?
Yeah, but it's of a much smaller tuition, so the prices, we are building into our budget a 5% increase. We know that that's going to happen. That runs usually 3 or 4%. That one's a little higher, but we acknowledge, and we have fewer kids at the consortium than we have in the past.
That was going to be my next question.
So that population of students, we are building programs to meet the needs. So the number, if you see the reduction of the number of students that were out of district, say 4 years ago, was somewhere around 111, and now we're down to 71. Those are the students that we're building programs for. But those are also the reason why we're requesting a BCBA and a speech therapist, because we're increasing our capacity to meet our Beverly students' needs in district in our programs by building really strong programs. Those programs are mirroring some of the services that you would get at the consortium versus the services that you would get at a private day or a residential.
Awesome, thank you.
Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. I was just wondering if typically on this orange sheet, does the cost of like a salary, say you needed to hire somebody at a higher salary, is that usually offset by like people who don't need to take the insurance?
So I think the next, can I talk to that when I get to the contractual obligations? Because I think that's where that would, where that lives. If I'm hearing you correctly, I think that's where that lives.
Thank you.
All right. So again, and here we are at the contractual obligations. So remember, we have contractual obligations that teachers step, teachers move lanes. We have our COLA increase. These are all known numbers. We know these numbers because these are a part of our contract, along with the healthcare increase. So we know, and that whether that and factored in. I mean, I think what you're asking about is as a teacher's salary goes up, how are we making sure that we're covering that? If we're hiring teachers, when we put in the 65,000. That's just an estimate, and so that is hiring, and sometimes we hire someone at 45 or 48, and sometimes we hire someone at 78 or 80. And so, but we find that utilizing that number, we've always been pretty close to estimating where we're going. Because sometimes we're hiring a coach, and so a reading coach is going to be someone obviously with lots of experience, which is going to make them a more expensive. And sometimes we're hiring, someone in their first or second year of teaching, and we're able to bring them in at a lower salary. So that's how we kind of correct for that. All right. So we know this is a real number, and we have that in our level service estimates that we're working on right now. And so just to recap, we know that our FY23 final budget appropriation was $69,343,934. Oh, I didn't specifically speak to Chapter 70 yet. The Chapter 70 money did come in. I know Representative Paracella and Senator Lovely referenced this earlier. Our Chapter 70 funding in FY23 was $13,158,441, and we have an incremental increase of about $1.3 million at $14,544,481 for FY24. Again, as a worksheet, this is how we do it. We take a look. Where are we? What do we think we have? So we know that if, in fact, we were to do everything on this orange sheet and nothing more, then we would be at $72,854,310. That is, however, if funding or supplemental relief was to come for the 775, that might bring it down, that might bring it up. Of the funding resources that we need to determine, it will include city contribution, but at this point, I'm not saying that's full city contribution, because there are, also looking at that 775, if in fact we look at it as a one-time increase, the amount of money that would be a one-time expense, perhaps we would find another funding source like ESSER or something somewhere else. And so we're still in the stages. We did meet with Bryant and the mayor. Jean, Erin and I met with Bryant and the mayor. And so we all know that it's just a little too early in the budget season for us to have those finite numbers right now. I just wanted to update all of you, make you aware of where we are, so that we can keep the conversation going. And we'll be coming back. I think I have next steps. Oh, again.
Can you go back a slide?
Yes.
One more.
Another one?
I just need a number, thank you.
Yeah. That's
Go.
on your orange sheet, by the way.
Okay, go. Thank
Yep.
you.
And so, again, where we are, we talked about the legislative process. The governor's budget proposal has $14,544,481 as the Chapter 70 amount allocated for Beverly. Again, and they highlighted the process pretty clearly. Next, House Ways and Means will come forward with their iteration of the budget. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. I was listening very carefully and not sure it's going up. Didn't sound like we were going in an upward trend this year. And then it goes to Senate, and then the Senate does their iteration of the budget, and then so somewhere along the line we'll have our final Chapter 70 allotment, and we'll know what that is. Again, the Student Opportunity Act is legislation that impacted the way that our Chapter 70 funds are formulated, and we definitely have benefited from the reformulation in many ways, mostly by incremental increases due to students that are English learners or students that are economically disadvantaged. The SOA is halfway through its implementation. If you remember, it's a 6-year rollout, and so we're year 3 out of 6, and so that the application of the new formula is getting there. Economically disadvantaged, again, remains. They made changes in the SOA, so it's 185% poverty level, so that increases the number of students in Beverly that are eligible to be considered for that incremental increase. So all of these pieces come together, including that aggregated wealth, that mayor that we were talking about earlier, that part of the formula. So it is a very complicated and comprehensive formula. I attend annually webinars. I have one coming up in a couple weeks where it's always helpful to me. It helps me wrap, and usually it's earlier than this. It helps me wrap my brain around how is it that we got what we got? What portion of this is due to the students that are in After Dark? So how much of this Chapter 70 money is allocated to us because we have 39 students attending the After Dark program, or how much of it, is coming in for whatever reason. So that we're still in that process, and that's where we are right now. So our next steps is to continue to look at our funding resources. Again, as I explained, looking at what could be considered a one-time expense. So a portion of the OSD increase is really a one-time expense. So that if there's a different funding source for that, what would it be and how would that come out of the budget? We always monitor our retirement savings. We have received a few retirement folks that we know now. We know there's more opportunity for retirements to come in. That's not a huge number for us, but sometimes it's calculated in. And we're going to continue to monitor enrollments, because I will say had the elementary principals all come to me in the last week. We've had at least 35 new students enroll in Beverly since January 3rd. Like, we're all surprised. Cove had 11, Ayers had 8 since January 1st. So that's like something that we're watching and monitoring. And all of that. They moved to Beverly. They're new to Beverly. So they're new to Beverly and they're enrolling. And there's no pattern or trend that we can see right now. They're just coming. I think I will say we do know that we get a pretty often an increase in Brazilian families because Brazil finishes school in the middle of February, and so they come here. They wait to move if they're coming to Massachusetts, and we have a large Brazilian population, so that's a few of our students. We know that when they come in, that's part of it. So,
Mayor Cahill?
Yeah, I'm just confused at the bottom. Is it a committee of the whole we are presenting?
No, sorry, that was that's my fault. I
So it is the
originally put
12th.
it for 322, but then I realized that 322 is not a committee of the whole. So the 12th is a regular school committee meeting
okay,
on the 12th.
thanks.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out, that I did that wrong, but I didn't do that right. So that's where we're at. I really, really encourage, if you would like to make an appointment, call Donna, and I'm happy to sit one-on-one with anyone if they have questions. To kind of go over these numbers. It's really kind of a complicated budget year, and so I'm happy to spend some time and go over and answer any questions that you have and give you any of that information. So feel free to reach out, and Donna will give you some time on the schedule as we go forward. All right?
Ms. Visnick has a question.
Over here scribbling numbers, that's why I asked you to go back a slide, thank you. And you can absolutely, Chair Abel, tell me that it's too early to be talking about this, but the contractual obligations alone are more than a 3% increase over last year's appropriated budget. And in fact, what we're looking at over top of last year's appropriated budget on this sheet right now, if my math is correct, is 3.06. And that number is lower thanks to the increase in Chapter 70 that we expect to get. So I maybe just want to put down a marker, put down a pen that we need to have a conversation at some point in time relative to the percentage increase and how it relates to our mandated, our contractual obligations, right? Because I think that people will look at that number. I mean, they'll look at the number that it is now, 3.06 doesn't even cover the contracted, the contractual increases, right? So, and I think that 3% as a general rule of thumb, I see your furrowed eyebrows across the room there, young man.
I'm lost.
Yeah.
What's the 3.06? Sorry.
If we look on the orange sheet, how much money, let me find a line if it's numbered. The difference between the very bottom line on this little box at the bottom, the difference between the FY24 request and the FY24 increase is $2,124,336. That number, if you divide it by 69,343,934, which was this year's city appropriated budget, gives you 3.06.
It's actually higher though, because it's the way that the box is written. The increase over the FY23 budget is $3,510,000.
Right, and we're quote unquote fortunate that we're only asking for 2.1 because of the increase.
Well, we're
in
not
Chapter
asking
70.
yet, though.
I
I guess
understand
that's
we're
what-
not asking
yeah,
yet.
yeah.
Right, so if Chapter 70 comes in as this sheet that Rep. Paracella gave us, then quote unquote, if everything on the orange sheet stays the same as it is right now, we will still be asking for a 3.06% increase over last year's budget. And my point is, first thing, that would be great if we got that much increase in Chapter 70. And it would be great if we were only asking for 2.1 instead of asking for 2.4, because to cover contractual obligations, we need 2.4 alone, right? And that's not even talking about that 775 one-time expense. So I think that, maybe, I don't know who's planning in 2 weeks from now, our joint meeting, but like I think that's a big number, and I think that it'll be controversial. So I think that the sooner we start talking about that, the better. Even if we put our eggs in the basket of, we're going to get 1.4 additional $1 million in Chapter 70 funding, it's still not I can't imagine that it'll be a palatable number percentage-wise with others. That's no, not necessarily anybody in this room is going to complain about that number, right? Our job is to do what's best for children, but when we look at our city finances and the big picture, and I spend a decent amount of my time trying to do that, I just can't imagine this number being palatable. That's all.
Mayor Cahill.
I want to make sure I understand. So as I look at the 3.5 million in proposed increase, I'm seeing a 4.8% increase in the school budget. Your 3.06 is how you're calculating an increase in city contribution over last year if the city was able to pick up that 2.1.
Yes.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Thanks.
Go ahead.
All right. So again, I urge, if you please come, happy to meet with anybody and talk more about any questions that you have. This is my last thing, bullying intervention and prevention plan. This was presented earlier to the curriculum and instruction, and if it's okay, I'm just going to run through. I went so quickly through them earlier that I thought it would be helpful for all of you. Just so that you know, we have a bullying and the district is required to have a bullying prevention and intervention plan, and we're required to review that biennially, which means every other year. And so we reviewed the plan, we presented the recommended changes to the Curriculum Instruction and Student Life Committee for review. And so now, I think Ms. Robinson is going to bring it forward to you for a vote. I just thought I would share with you. I did send the plan copy to you in your document. Donna included them in your documentation. Highlighted in red were the changes. I just wanted to go over the changes with you to make sure that you understood them. And I will say that largely they were language changes. There were no substantial changes to the procedures that we do. We just fine-tuned. We had our attorneys go over it, make sure that we're matching with the law. We look at the DESE recommended plan, make sure that we're meeting all the requirements that DESE has for us. We take a look at any of the little pieces that we have within it. This plan is posted on our website for anyone that needs to see it. But the language changes that you saw in red, many of them were just, we added pregnant students because they weren't in there. And so we needed to make sure that we were looking at all groups of students. The major changes, so to speak, is that on page 6, when we were looking at professional development, we included a bullet that expanded opportunities for professional development for staff on ways to instill accountability in the school setting. And that kind of aligns with we're required to list in our plan responsibility, not only just for reporting, but responsibilities for what people have to do. So in our training, we've amended our training to make sure that all of those responsibilities are made clear to staff. The responsibility for identifying the existing needs and cultural and linguistic resources. So typically that was, I think, under the responsibility of the assistant superintendent. We just changed it to be under the responsibility of the director of opportunity, access, and equity, because he is, at this point, that office is the one that's overseeing. So we're just making sure that our language matches our procedures. Reports of bullying may be made to the school leadership on our form through written or oral communication. Previously that read in our anonymous boxes that we had listed in the office, and we no longer have anonymous shoe boxes in the office, which is something that we used to have. There's a procedure and a method for people to make anonymous reports. And then finally, there's a long string, a 2-page string that has a lot of red, but the only thing that is we're required to repeat some information that's in other places. So the first section talks about notice to parents, and in this section talks about our procedures for how we're responding to bullying. It's the same language, it's just duplicated in other places. So there are no substantial changes to our procedures or policies. These are largely language changes. So I just wanted to make sure, but now that you have had that, I'll answer any questions, but we'll be looking for, I think Mr. Robinson's going to bring forward a motion for that. I don't know if you want to do that now or.
So
During CISL, we unanimously 8-0 recommended the school committee adopt these changes. So you're looking for a motion to that effect?
Yes, we're looking for a motion to what President Abel just shared with you.
So moved. That we adopt this updated bullying prevention and intervention plan.
I'll second that motion. Do we have any questions? Mayor Cahill.
A quick one, thanks. The notice to law enforcement agency, page 13. I guess for all of this, but that kind of caught my eye in terms of the language. This language was already elsewhere in the plan?
Correct. It just needs to be, it needed to be, it also appears in another part, but we had to make sure that it was in both sections.
Okay,
So
so
we've
the-
always had to do it. We just didn't have the language in the right section.
Okay, but this particular language is just being moved. There's no, no edit or change to the language itself.
Correct. And
Okay.
it's not, and it's not that we weren't doing it or that we are doing anything differently. It's just that it needed to appear in that section of the plan as well.
Appreciate it, thanks.
Yep, thank you.
I'm looking online as well. Do we have any other questions? Ms. Visnick?
Dr. Trochik, I believe I just heard you say we don't need a change to any of our policies or procedures. Rather, we just needed to update this plan. That's good news because we're maybe in the middle of doing a whole bunch of policy work. But can you speak at least for a second to how this plan is directed by those policies, by the policies that we have? Like, there's consistency there, right?
Yes.
I just
so,
wanna...
so that was that's part of the process. So there's several things that have to align. Our student handbooks have to align with our employee district manual and has to align with our bullying prevention and intervention plan, along with the trainings that we do. So this is cross-referencing and aligning and all of these changes. So when we come forward with the handbooks, our handbooks are at the attorneys right now as well, making sure that they're aligned. And our district employee manual, Mrs. Brown just finished reviewing and revising that to make sure that the language is all up to date and across. We didn't change. We're just making sure that we're right on, spot on with the language that needs to be in place.
And I'll just comment that on the previous major revision for our policy work, we spent a lot of time making sure that we were not including procedures in the policy, but rather referencing existing law and leaving the how to the superintendent.
I just wanted to make sure that that syncing thing was happening.
Yes.
S-Y-N-K, S-Y-N-C, not S-I-N-K.
Okay. And as a point of information, is it like Cat Lyons or one of the special
Lyons.
ed
So she's our
attorney?
student
It's not our
services.
school
Yeah.
committee attorney.
Student,
Okay.
no, it's not Liz, it's Kat. She does our student services, so she's
And
the
that's
one
her
that took a
specialty.
look.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm looking, any other questions before I do a roll call? We have a motion on the table to adopt the changes as outlined in our packet to the bullying prevention and intervention plan. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva? Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. That's
Okay.
all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Ooh, a little over my target, but let's quickly hear from our standing committees, Finance and Facilities. Don't believe you've met.
We have not met since I last reported out. We are due to meet 2 weeks from today. I'll just say that we're supposed to meet before our joint meeting, and the city council has posted the joint meeting at a different time than we posted the joint meeting. So the ramifications of that are that FNF may in fact be starting a little earlier. We might have to change the time and then update our posting. So stay tuned, FNFers.
Yep. I will work with Council President Flowers and just make sure we have agreed upon time set. And
Awesome.
I'll let you, we'll work that out.
Okay, thank you.
And then for curriculum instruction and student life, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. So the Curriculum Instruction and Student Life Committee met this evening, and we heard from our students from the middle school that BMS held their first career day on March 3rd. Over 40 companies attended, and representatives shared their experiences, work, and training from middle school students. They said, and I quote, "They got our minds thinking about what we want to do in the future." At BHS, the REACH internships are getting closer, and seniors need to have their forms submitted by March 17th. Seniors are starting to make college decisions. Course selection has also begun for grades 9 through 11. An advanced placement AP fair will be held on March 15th during lunches, where students will talk students in AP courses will talk to students who are hoping to take AP courses to help elevate their learning and choose the appropriate courses based on their interests. Dr. Flaherty announced that this year's Showcase of Learning will be held on June 15th from 5:30 to 7 at the high school. Our focus topic for this evening was, for this meeting was math. And what we learned was summed up nicely by Dr. Flaherty, who said that overall math is no longer just about sitting in a chair with a piece of paper in isolation solving problems. At all levels, K through 12 math in the Beverly Schools is an interactive and energetic subject where kids are working together, holding each other accountable, and receiving immediate feedback, and having fun thinking and talking through their thinking. Teachers also are receiving immediate feedback from the programs that we're using, and are even able to see how long students are spending on problems, what they're struggling with. And this obviously serves to inform and target their own instruction. At all levels and with all the programs we've purchased, students get hints, feedback, and a report of how they're doing. So just a little more detail for BHS on the upper levels. At the middle school, Dr. Thomas and Lisa Oliver highlighted how the Reveal and Alex programs are utilized for whole and small group instruction, as well as project-based learning assignments are taking place as well. We got a glimpse of the projects that students are working on in a statistics class that offers voice and choice to participants, as well as helping them to make real-world connections. We learned that Alex and Reveal are similar in terms of feedback, yet Alex meets students where they are so that they get what they need individually, which is important to see the gaps that still exist in student learning and to hopefully to close them. Our younger BMS students are using the Zern math program, and they're loving the aspects of using different strategies and the math chat function of the program. At the elementary level, Zern is also being used, but a few different highlights at the 5 elementary schools. We heard about the following. So AIRS reported on school-wide competitions and team building through math. Centerville shared their discourse practices where students think and talk about their thinking. Cove discussed Breakout EDU, which involves standards-aligned interactive kits for supplemental learning and offers the opportunity for kids to work together. Hannah talked about their 60-minute win block, where students are strategically grouped and given the help that they need during that time in math. Students give feedback to each other about the process, and students get to work with other students and teachers that they don't always get to work with. And in North Beverly, they shared their work with BFF, which is building fact fluency, and they highlighted their image talks and their tool talks. And finally, we reviewed and recommended moving the bullying and prevention plan that Dr. Chorojek just spoke about, with its language changes, its expanded opportunities for PD for staff, and changes to electronic and anonymous reporting from CISL to the larger school community for a vote this evening. And our next meeting will be on Wednesday, April 12th. 2023. And that's it.
That's a really good recapitulation. Thank you. Negotiations, as I mentioned during my initial report about dates, we will have our introductory meeting on Tuesday, March 14th with our AFSCME units. And the intention of that is to set some ground rules with all three of the bargaining units that fall in the AFSCME category. And then from there, we'll have to figure out what dates work for future negotiations on those three contracts. Policy. Dr. McKenzie.
Hello, everyone. So policy is making progress. We're excited that we are proposing to meet on March 15th. We're working on the agenda. The first couple policies that we look to consider include policies with regard to the library, its policies around selections and any types of concerns, that there be a procedure to address those. The other policy concerns photography and its use with students. And in the meantime, we've been working to really align our policy review with what's already been updated. So today we received in our mail, for those of us who are on school committee, we likely received in the mail some of those policy updates that have been codified and adjusted from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. So that just arrived to us as well. So we're going to be aligning what's already been changed and updating that. And again, we'll look forward to meeting on the 15th. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, we just decided today, and then that packet came in the mail. So we'll work with Donna to get that posted. And we will post it probably as a committee of the whole, since I'm not on that subcommittee, but I was the prior chair to this policy subcommittee. So if you do see a committee of the whole on the 15th, you're welcome to attend, but you're not expected to attend. It's just to allow us to have 4 members participate in the discussion. Last item on our agenda this evening is communication from school committee members. Ms. Visnick.
I have the questions, at least one of the questions that you read to our guests today, people asking about testing the stream that runs through the high school campus. So, Mr. Mayor, maybe you and I can talk about that. Several, although no, it didn't seem like any Centerville PTO people wrote you a letter today. The Centerville PTO definitely agrees with those letters from the Cove. They're very interested in keeping, if not expanding, an elementary librarian. Dr. Trocheck and I had some quality time together over the last week or so, talking about some booster issues, high school sports, and a huge shout out to some people called me and wanted a fan bus to go to the high school boys basketball game, and that was pulled off in relatively short time, and I appreciate that.
This is an automatic, non-emergency courtesy message. The security system is now on it. Thank you.
We're locked in.
I have snacks. We are also going to probably lose our lights, since we do like to conserve energy. Are there other members that want to bring forward? I have 3 topics that a constituent brought to me that I have neglected to bring to the superintendent regarding signs about no dogs on our campuses and a lot of dog visitors during school hours. Something about firearm permits that I will share with you directly, and then just behaviors at school, rumors versus realities, and whether or not we can put some minds at rest about what happens at school and what doesn't happen at school. So I will work with Dr. Trocheck to make sure that constituents' issues are addressed. Any others? Okay. Before we lose our lights and before we really, really get locked in, why don't we have
to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn for Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Second for Ms. Robinson. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva? Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. 7-0. It is 10:01. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, BevCam.
Where are the eyes? You who are planning a meeting for March 15th.